The snow came down like ash over Chicago that Christmas Eve, and Vincent Calloway sat alone in the back booth of a dying roadside diner with a loaded gun pressed against his thigh and 20 years of blood on his hands. He was waiting to fake a love story for men who wanted him dead. Then she walked through the door, a tired waitress with a 5-year-old boy clinging to her coat, and an old carol started playing, and the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast began to cry. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button. Drop your city in the comments so I know how far this story has traveled tonight. The wind off Lake Michigan that night had teeth in it. It tore down Cermak Road, hooked left past the old steel yards, and slammed into the glass front of Marlene's diner like it had a personal grudge. Inside, the fluorescent tubes buzzed and flickered, and a half-broken Christmas wreath hung crooked over the register, missing 2 bulbs and most of its dignity. Vincent Calloway sat in the last booth on the left. He always sat in the last booth on the left. Back to the wall, eyes on the door. A man who'd lived this long didn't sit with his back to anything. He was 41 years old. He looked older around the eyes and younger around the jaw, and the people who knew his name in the right circles had stopped saying it out loud 6 years ago. They called him the Calloway problem. They called him the man on the lake. They called him a lot of things, and none of them were Vincent. He wore a black wool overcoat that cost more than the diner's monthly rent, and a charcoal suit underneath it, and his hands were folded on the chipped Formica tabletop like he was praying. He wasn't praying. He hadn't prayed since he was 11 years old and watched his father bleed out on a kitchen floor in Bridgeport while his mother screamed into a dish towel so the neighbors wouldn't hear. He didn't pray anymore. He counted exits. There were 3. The front door he was facing, the kitchen pass-through behind the counter where a fat cook in a stained apron was scraping a flat top with a metal spatula, and the emergency exit at the end of the hall by the bathrooms, which was chained shut, illegally, and which Vincent had personally checked when he walked in 22 minutes ago. He had a Sig Sauer P226 and a leather rig under his left arm, a backup .380 at his ankle, a folding knife in his right pocket, and a phone in his coat that, if he pressed the side button 3 times fast, would put 4 armored vehicles on this block in under 9 minutes. He was, by any reasonable definition, the most dangerous thing in a 10-block radius, and he was about to go on a blind date. Refill, hun. The waitress was older, maybe 60, with a name tag that said Doris, and a voice cured by 40 years of menthol cigarettes. She didn't know who he was. That was the only reason Vincent let her stand that close to him. Black, he said. It's already black, sweetheart. Then it's fine. She poured anyway, because that was what she did, and she walked away, because something in his face told her not to chat. Vincent watched her go. Watched the swing of the kitchen door behind her. Watched a man in a brown Carhartt jacket at the counter who'd been nursing the same cup of coffee for 38 minutes. The man in the Carhartt wasn't a problem. Vincent had clocked him as a long-haul trucker the moment he walked in. Calluses on the heels of his hands, salt stains up the back of his boots from 1,000 miles of slush. The man kept glancing at his watch and then at the snow. He was just trying to get home. Vincent envied him in a way he didn't have words for. The meeting tonight wasn't his idea. It was Frankie Doyle's idea, and Frankie Doyle was an idiot, but Frankie Doyle was also the consigliere who'd kept the Calloway operation alive through 3 federal indictments, 2 RICO investigations, and a war with the Sokolov outfit that had left bodies floating in the Chicago River from May to August of last year. So when Frankie said, Vincent, you need to look human in front of the Albanians, Vincent had listened. The Albanians were coming in 2 weeks. They wanted to talk about the port. The port was worth, conservatively, $400 million a year, and the Albanians were old school, and the old school types didn't like doing business with men who looked like they ate glass for breakfast. They liked men with wives, with kids, with Christmas trees in the windows of their houses in Lake Forest. Vincent had none of those things. Vincent had a penthouse on Wacker Drive with no photographs on the walls and a refrigerator that contained 1 bottle of San Pellegrino and a wedge of Parmesan he hadn't touched in 3 weeks. So Frankie had hired a woman, not a hooker. Frankie was specific about that. A normal woman, Vinny, a school teacher type. Pretty, but not too pretty. Someone who looks like she'd burn a casserole. They were going to meet here, at this diner, on Christmas Eve because it was supposed to look spontaneous. They were going to be seen together twice more before the Albanian dinner. Photographed once. And then, After the deal was signed, she'd get her $30,000 and a non-disclosure agreement with teeth, and she'd disappear back into whatever life she'd come from. That was the plan. Vincent looked at his watch. She was 11 minutes late. He took a sip of the coffee. It was burnt. He put it down. He thought about leaving. He thought about it harder than he should have. There was a song playing on the diner's speakers, some old thing crackling through a blown tweeter, and Vincent realized he'd been hearing it for a while without listening to it. Some woman singing about chestnuts and an open fire. His mother used to play that record, on the Magnavox in the front room of the apartment on Halstead, before everything. He set his jaw, looked at the door, and that was when Eleanor Hayes pushed it open. She came in backwards, fighting the wind, her shoulder against the door. A blast of cold air and snow blew in with her and ruffled the napkins on the counter. She had a kid on her hip, a little boy, bundled in a puffy blue coat 2 sizes too big and a knit hat with a yarn ball on top of it. The kid was sleepy and pink-cheeked and clutching a stuffed animal that Vincent couldn't quite identify from across the room. A rabbit, maybe, missing one of its ears. She set the boy down on his feet just inside the door and crouched to fix his hat. She was wearing a coat that had been a good coat maybe 7 winters ago. Now it had a tear at the elbow she'd tried to mend with a piece of dark tape on the inside. Vincent could see the outline of the tape because the coat was thin enough to be translucent under the fluorescence. She stood up, looked around, saw him, froze. He watched her recalibrate. She'd been told, presumably, that she was meeting a businessman, maybe a lawyer, maybe a guy who owned a chain of car washes. She had not been told she was meeting a man who looked, even sitting still, like a closed fist. She came over anyway. The kid trailed her, holding the back of her coat with one mittened hand. "You're Vincent?" Her voice was lower than he'd expected, hoarse, like she was getting over a cold or fighting one off. "Yes, God, I'm so sorry I'm late. There was a guy who, and my sitter just," she stopped, closed her eyes for a second, took a breath. "I'm so sorry. My sister was supposed to take him and her car wouldn't start, and I know this isn't what you were expecting. I can go. I'll just go. I'll tell Frankie Sit down." She sat down. She slid into the booth across from him and pulled the kid in beside her, against the wall, and started peeling off his mittens with the kind of automatic competence Vincent had only ever seen in soldiers and surgeons. The kid's hands came out chapped and red. She rubbed them between her own. "Oliver," she said quietly, "say hi." The kid looked up at Vincent. He had enormous dark eyes and a nose running from the cold and a smear of something, chocolate maybe or just dirt, on his cheek. "Hi," Oliver said. "Hi," Vincent said. His own voice sounded strange to him, like he hadn't used it in a long time, even though he'd been talking all day. He'd talked to Frankie twice. He'd talked to a man in Cicero about a debt. He'd talked to a federal informant in a parking garage and watched the man's face go from confidence to begging in the space of about 90 seconds. But when he said hi to the kid, it came out different. The waitress came back. Doris. Pen behind her ear, pad in her hand. Tired smile. "What can I get you, hun?" Eleanor looked at the menu, looked at the kid, looked at the menu again. Vincent watched her eyes do the math. He'd watched a lot of people do that math in his life. It was the math of how much is in my wallet versus how hungry are we. "Just a coffee for me," she said. "And could I get him a grilled cheese? And, a small milk?" "You want fries with that, sweetheart?" Eleanor hesitated. "She'll have the meatloaf platter," Vincent said. "He'll have the grilled cheese with fries and a milk. Bring me another coffee, and whatever pie is fresh." Doris looked at him, looked at Eleanor, wrote it down. "Apple or cherry?" "Both." She walked away. Eleanor opened her mouth. "Don't," Vincent said. "I wasn't going to." "You were." She closed her mouth. Her cheeks went pink. Not embarrassment, he realized. Anger. She was angry at him for ordering for her. Good. He didn't need her grateful. Grateful people lied. Angry people told you the truth even when they didn't mean to. "How old is he?" Vincent said. 5. "He yours?" "My sister's." A pause. He lives with me. It's complicated." Vincent nodded once. He didn't ask. He had a feeling he knew the shape of complicated when he heard it. There was an absence in the way she said "my sister" that wasn't death. Death had a specific weight. This was something else. Addiction, maybe. Or prison. Or just the slow erosion of a person until they couldn't be trusted to keep their own child alive on a Tuesday afternoon. Oliver was looking at the salt shaker. He picked it up with both hands, shook it experimentally over his paper placemat, a tiny constellation of salt grains scattered across the paper. "Oliver?" Eleanor said. "Sorry." He put it down, pushed the grains around with one finger. Then he looked up at Vincent and said very seriously, "Do you have any crayons?" Vincent looked at him. "No," he said. "I don't." "Oh." The kid's face fell about half an inch. He went back to his salt grains. Vincent reached into the inside pocket of his coat, past the gun, past the phone. There was a pen there, a Mont Blanc rollerball, black ink. The pen had been a gift from a man who was now buried in a vacant lot in Hammond, Indiana. Vincent didn't think about that often. He took out the pen. He uncapped it. He slid it across the table to the kid. "It's not a crayon." Oliver picked it up like it was made of glass. "It's a really nice pen. You can use it on the placemat. My aunt says I'm not supposed to—" "It's okay," Eleanor said quietly. She was looking at Vincent. Her face had changed. Not softened. He didn't want to call it softened. But something behind her eyes had shifted, the way ice shifts on a lake in March before you can see the crack. Oliver hunched over the placemat and began to draw. For a long minute, none of them spoke. The song on the speakers ended and another one started, something with sleigh bells. Vincent watched the kid's hand move across the paper. He was drawing a circle, a big lopsided circle in the upper right corner of the placemat, then little lines coming out of it. A sun. He was drawing a sun. Eleanor was watching Vincent watch her nephew. "You're not what Frankie said you'd be," she said. "What did Frankie say I'd be?" "He said you were a businessman." "I am a businessman." She looked at the coat, the suit, the way his hand sat on the table, the way his eyes had logged every entrance the moment she'd walked through one. "Sure," she said. She didn't push it. He liked her for that. Most people pushed. Most people thought if they asked enough questions, they'd get to the bottom of him, and they didn't understand that the bottom of him was a place you didn't want to get to. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Doing what?" "This. What Frankie pays you for." She actually laughed. It was a short, ugly laugh. There was no humor in it. "This is the first time," she said. "And the last, believe me." "What does he pay you?" $300 a night, plus he said there'd be a bonus if you liked me. I'm supposed to be your— I don't even know. He didn't say. Girlfriend. That's what I figured. You're not. No. She looked at Oliver. I'm really not. Vincent leaned back in the booth. He let his eyes settle on her properly for the first time. She was 29, maybe 30. Brown hair pulled back in a knot that was coming loose at the temples. A face that had been pretty before exhaustion had moved into it like a tenant who didn't pay rent. Hands that worked. He could see the small scar across 2 knuckles on her right hand, the kind you got from a knife slipping in a restaurant kitchen, and another one along the back of her left wrist that he couldn't place. "What do you do?" he said. "Really?" "I waitress at a place in Pilsen. I take shifts at a coffee shop on Wabash on the mornings I can get someone to watch him." "That's 2 jobs." "It's 2 jobs. And you took a 3rd one tonight." "I took a 3rd one tonight." "Why?" She looked at him. "Why do you think?" Vincent didn't answer. The kid was still drawing. He'd added a house under the sun now, a square with a triangle on top, 2 windows, a door. And then in front of the door 3 stick figures, a tall one, a medium one, a small one. Doris brought the food. Eleanor's meatloaf came on a thick white plate with a swirl of mashed potatoes and a pile of green beans cooked into submission. The grilled cheese was cut on the diagonal, and the cheese was still pulling apart between the halves. There was a glass of milk in a thick green tumbler. There were 2 slices of pie on separate plates. There was a fresh cup of coffee for Vincent. Oliver looked at the food like he hadn't seen food in 3 days. "Eat, baby," Eleanor said. He ate. Vincent watched her watch him eat. She didn't touch her own plate. Not at first. She waited until the kid had eaten about half the grilled cheese and most of the fries. She waited until he reached for his milk, and only then did she pick up her fork. It was the most human thing Vincent had seen in a year. He looked down at his own coffee. He didn't drink it. The song on the speakers ended. The next one started. It was the carol his mother used to play. He felt it before he understood it. A tightness across the chest, a pressure behind the eyes. The diner's fluorescence got brighter for a second, and then dimmer, or maybe that was just him. Vincent Calloway, who had once watched a man crawl across a basement floor toward a phone that wasn't going to save him, who had ordered the deaths of 17 people in the last 6 years and personally executed 9 of them, sat in a vinyl booth in a roadside diner on Christmas Eve and felt something hot and unwelcome slide down the side of his face. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just sat there and let it happen because he didn't trust his hand not to shake if he raised it. Eleanor saw. He watched her see it. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. She set it down very carefully on the edge of the plate. She glanced at Oliver, who was completely absorbed in his drawing and had not noticed anything. Then she leaned forward across the table just slightly and lowered her voice until it was barely above the hum of the freezer behind the counter. "Hey." He didn't look at her. "Hey," she said again. "Listen to me." He looked at her. Her eyes were brown and tired and not afraid. He'd expected fear. Everyone got afraid eventually. She didn't. "I don't know what's happening to you," she said. "I don't know who you are. I don't know why I'm here. But it's Christmas Eve and you're crying in a diner, and that's a hard thing to do alone. So," she took a breath. "You can borrow me," she said, "for tonight, if you want. You can borrow me as your girlfriend. I'll be whoever Frankie said I had to be. I won't ask you anything. I won't tell anyone. And tomorrow we go our separate ways and you don't owe me a goddamn thing, okay?" Vincent stared at her. She was 29 years old, and she was wearing a coat she'd taped up from the inside, and she was offering him the only thing she had left to offer, which was herself. And she was doing it for free, and she was doing it because of a song. He had spent his entire adult life learning how to read people, how to find the angle, the con, the hidden ask. He looked at her now, and he tried, instinctively, to find it. There wasn't one. It was the most terrifying thing that had happened to him in a decade. He reached up, finally, and wiped his face with the back of his hand. Quick, brutal, like he was scraping something off a windshield. "I'm not crying," he said. "Okay. It's the lights. Okay. You don't know what I am." She looked at him. She looked at his hands. She looked at the way the wool of his coat sat on his shoulders. She looked at the way his eyes had not stopped, even now, even crying, tracking the door. "I have some idea," she said quietly. He almost laughed. Almost. Came out as a sound through his nose. "Eat your meatloaf," he said. She ate her meatloaf. The kid finished his grilled cheese. He pushed his plate aside. He held up the placemat to Vincent. "Look." The drawing was a mess. It was the most beautiful mess Vincent had ever seen. A big yellow sun, a square house, 3 stick figures. Above the house, in shaky kindergarten letters, the kid had written one word. H-O-M-E. "It's a home," Oliver said. "I see that," Vincent said. "That's my Aunt Ellie. That's me. And that's you." Eleanor put her hand on the kid's shoulder. "Honey, he has a pen," Oliver said, like that explained everything. Like in his world, a man who gave you his pen was a man you put in your drawing of a home. Vincent looked at the placemat for a long time. Then he reached into his coat. Different pocket. He took out an envelope, plain, manila, folded once down the middle. Inside was $3,000 in hundreds, banded with a paper strip that said First Federal on it, even though it had not been within a mile of First Federal in its life. He set the envelope on the table between them. "This is for tonight," he said. "And tomorrow, you and the kid go somewhere, a motel, a nice one. You stay there for 2 nights. You don't go back to your apartment until I call you." Eleanor stared at the envelope. "What? You came here through Frankie. Frankie's a sieve. Anyone who wanted to know I was eating in this diner tonight knows. Anyone who wanted to know who I was eating with knows. You and the kid walked through that door an hour ago, and now you're a thing that exists in my world. So you go to the motel, you stay there. I'll call you. She wasn't looking at the envelope anymore. She was looking at him. I don't take it. I'm not for sale. It's not, and neither is my kindness. Her voice had dropped, gone very flat and very low. I didn't say what I said for money, Vincent. I said it because you looked like a man drowning, and I have hauled enough drowning people out of enough water in my life to know the look. You don't get to pay me for that. You don't get to make it into a transaction so you can feel okay about it. I'm not. She stopped. She picked up the envelope. She slid it back across the table. I'm not for sale, she said again. Oliver looked up. Why were you sad? He said. Vincent looked at him. The kid's face was completely open. 5 years old, crumbs on his chin, the Mont Blanc pen sticking out of his small fist. He had asked the question the way a child asks every question, which is to say honestly, without strategy, expecting an answer. Vincent opened his mouth. He didn't know what he was going to say. He never got to say it, because the front door of Marlene's diner opened and the wind came in again, and with the wind came 2 men in dark coats, and Vincent saw them before they saw him because he had been watching the door for 41 years. The first one was tall, Russian by the cheekbones. The second one was shorter, thicker, his right hand already inside his coat. They weren't here for coffee. They weren't here for pie. They had come in too fast and they hadn't looked around the way a man looks around a diner he's never been in. They'd come in like they already knew where he was sitting. Vincent's hand went under the table. The tall one's eyes found him. The thick one's hand came out of the coat with something black and short in it. The trucker at the counter was still looking at his watch. The cook in the back was still scraping the flat top. Doris was at the register, ringing up an order for a man with a takeout bag. The little speaker above the door was still playing the carol. Eleanor saw Vincent's face change. She didn't know what she was seeing, but she knew it. Oliver, she said, very quiet, very fast. Honey, get down. What? Get down. Vincent's voice was a whisper that wasn't a whisper. Under the table, now, both of you, now. The thick one raised his arm. Eleanor grabbed the kid, and the first shot blew the napkin dispenser off their table in a spray of metal and white paper that fell, fluttering like the snow outside had finally made its way in. The world went sideways in 3 sounds. The first sound was the shot, a flat, ugly crack that wasn't like the movies, that didn't echo, that just punched a hole in the air and was gone. The second sound was the napkin dispenser hitting the linoleum, a metallic clatter that rolled under the next booth. The third sound was Oliver. Not a scream, not yet. A small wet inhale. The kind of breath a kid takes when his body knows something is wrong before his brain catches up. Vincent was already moving. He came out of the booth low, his left hand sweeping the table. Coffee cup, sugar caddy, the manila envelope, the half-eaten meatloaf, all of it cascading to the floor in a wash of brown liquid and ceramic. His right hand was full of the cig. He hadn't remembered drawing it. He never did. The gun was just there the way his own hand was there. An extension, a thing his body did without consulting him. Down, he said. Not loud. He didn't need to be loud. Eleanor, down. She was already going. She had Oliver in both hands, and she went sideways under the table the way a mother goes, which is the way a mother has always gone since the first cave and the first thing with teeth. Body first, child behind, hip bones and shoulder blades absorbing everything between her and the threat. Oliver made another one of those wet, small sounds. The yarn ball on his hat caught on the underside of the table, and the hat came off and stayed there. The tall one was shouting in Russian. The thick one was lining up another shot. Vincent put 2 in his chest from 40 feet. The cig was loud in a way the first shot hadn't been. The cig was a hammer in a closed room. Doris screamed. The cook dropped his spatula. The trucker in the Carhartt hit the floor face down with his hands over the back of his head, which told Vincent everything he needed to know about the trucker. Combat veteran, probably Iraq, probably knew exactly what was happening before the second shot. The thick one went down. Not clean. His weight punched a bar stool out of his way, and he landed on his side and his gun skittered 6 feet across the linoleum and stopped against the base of the cigarette machine. The tall one was faster than the thick one. The tall one had already started moving the moment Vincent's first round connected. He was behind the counter now, behind Doris, and Doris was a 60-year-old woman who served pancakes, and his arm was around her throat, and his pistol was against the soft skin under her ear. Calloway, the tall one said. His English was good, heavy on the consonants, but good. Put it down. Put it down. Or I open her like a... Vincent shot him in the eye. It was a 38-foot shot through a moving target with a hostage in front of it, and Vincent took it without thinking about it, because thinking about it was how you lost. The bullet went through the tall one's left eye socket and out the back of his skull and into the wall behind him, and the tall one's body went straight down like someone had cut a wire. Doris stayed standing for a full 2 seconds before her knees gave out. She sat down on the rubber mat behind the counter with a little soft sound, uh-huh, and put both hands on her own face like she was checking it was still there. Silence. Not silence. Silence afterwards, which is its own thing. The hum of the freezer. The carol still going on the speakers, because the speakers didn't know. The drip of coffee off the edge of the table. Oliver, under the table, breathing in short, fast little bursts. Vincent crossed the diner in 5 strides. He didn't holster. He kicked the thick one's pistol further under the cigarette machine. He put 2 fingers under the thick one's jaw. No pulse. He moved to the tall one. No pulse. He hadn't expected one, but you check. You always check. Then he went back to the booth. He went down on one knee. Eleanor. She was looking at him from under the table. Her face was the color of paper. Her arms were around Oliver, and Oliver's face was pressed into the side of her neck. And Vincent could see one of Oliver's hands clutching a fistful of her hair so hard her scalp had gone white where the strands pulled. Are you hit? She didn't answer. Eleanor, are you hit? No, I'm the kid. He's Oliver, baby. Look at me. Oliver. The kid lifted his head. His eyes were glassy. He wasn't crying. He should have been. The fact that he wasn't was the thing that was going to wake Vincent up at 3 a.m. for the next 4 weeks. We need to go, Vincent said. Right now. We are going to walk out of this diner together. You are going to put him on your hip. You are going to keep his face against your shoulder. You are not going to look at the floor. Do you understand me? She nodded. Say it. I understand. Get up. She got up. She did it on autopilot, her body listening to him because her brain had stopped working 3 seconds ago. She scooped Oliver up the way she had set him down at the start of all this and tucked his face against her collarbone and his thin little legs locked around her ribs. Vincent took her elbow. He didn't grab. He guided. He moved her out of the booth and past the booth and around the body of the thick one without ever letting her see it because her angle was wrong and his shoulder was in her sightline, and that was on purpose. Doris was crawling along the floor behind the counter saying, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." The trucker had gotten up onto his knees and was staring at Vincent with an expression that wasn't fear exactly. It was recognition, one operator clocking another. Vincent nodded at the trucker. The trucker nodded back. You didn't see me, Vincent said. I didn't see anybody, the trucker said. Vincent slid 2 of the hundreds from his coat pocket onto the counter without looking. He pushed Eleanor toward the door. The cold hit them like a hand. The wind had picked up. The snow was coming sideways now, hard, and the parking lot was half empty, and the streetlights overhead were doing the orange sodium thing they did in old Chicago neighborhoods, where nobody had updated anything since 1987. Vincent's car was 30 feet away, black armored Suburban, tinted to legal limit and then some. He'd parked it nose out, the way he always parked, because you never put yourself in a position where you had to back up to leave. Get in the back, he said, on the floor, behind the driver's seat. The floor, Eleanor, the floor. She got in. She got in the back. She put Oliver on the rubber mat behind the driver's seat, and she got in beside him, and she curled her body around him like a closing hand. Vincent slammed the door. He went around the front of the truck. He scanned. 2 cars in the lot. The trucker's rig idling at the edge. A delivery van he'd already noted. No one moving. No third shooter. He got behind the wheel. He started the truck. He did not put on his seatbelt. He pulled out of the lot at exactly the speed limit, because nothing draws attention like a man fleeing, and Vincent had not fled anything since he was 16 years old. He drove 3 blocks before he started the call. The phone was in the dash cradle. Voice activated. He said one word. Frankie. It rang twice. Yeah, Vinny, I was just 2 shooters, Marlene's dead. I need to clean up in 11 minutes or less, and I need it not to be sloppy. There was a small sound on the other end of the line. Frankie Doyle was a man who had been Vincent's father's consigliere before he was Vincent's, and Frankie Doyle had heard a lot of phone calls in his life. But he was 67 years old, and his blood pressure was bad, and the sound he made was the sound of a man who had just been told to shovel snow at midnight in February. Tell me you're not hurt. I'm not hurt. Tell me the girl. The girl is in my truck, with her kid, on the floor. There was a longer silence. Vinny, don't. Vinny, we are going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. The second I get her somewhere, I can put a wall between her and whoever the next two assholes are. But right now, you are getting on the phone to Manny, and you are getting a crew to that diner, and you are making sure that the waitress and the trucker who is in there get exactly the amount of money it takes to convince them they did not see what they saw. Are we clear? We're clear. And Frankie? Yeah. Who knew? A pause. What? Who knew? Who knew where I was tonight? Who knew about the girl? Walk me through it. Vinny? Walk me through it. He could hear Frankie breathing. He could hear ice in a glass on Frankie's end. Frankie drank scotch on Christmas Eve. Frankie drank scotch on all the eves. I knew. Manny knew because Manny set up the meet. Sal knew because Sal drove you. The girl knew. The booking. The booking went through Linda at the service. Linda doesn't know who you are. She only knows it was a Callaway meet because the deposit came off a Callaway account. That's it. That's 6 people. That's the circle. And one of them sold me. Vinny, one of them sold me, Frankie. 2 Russian shooters do not walk into a diner in Cicero on Christmas Eve and find me in the back booth because they got lucky. Russians? Russians. Christ. Find out which one of them sold me. Find out before I do, Frankie, because if I do it first, you are going to lose somebody you don't want to lose. He killed the call. He drove. He drove west on Cermak and then south on Pulaski, and then he doubled back east on 31st because anyone with half a brain was going to be checking the bridges and the on-ramps for the Callaway truck. He drove for 19 minutes without saying a word. In the rearview mirror, he could see the top of Eleanor's head where she was curled around the kid on the floor mat. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She kept her face pressed into Oliver's hair, and her eyes were open, and she was staring at the back of the seat in front of her. Oliver was crying now, quietly. The way kids cry when they've finally figured out something is wrong. Vincent gripped the wheel. He had killed 2 men in front of that child. 2 men with their faces fully exposed in the lights of a diner while that child was 4 feet away. There was no version of the next 10 years where that child did not remember that. There was no envelope of money, no apartment lease, no protective custody, no goddamn thing Vincent could do that would put the napkin dispenser back on the table or unhear the sound of the cig in a closed room. He felt his jaw lock so hard he could hear his own teeth. "Where are we going?" Eleanor said. From the floor. Not loud, just a question. "My place." "Your place where?" "Downtown. It's safe. Nobody gets in there I don't authorize." You said in the diner you wanted us at a motel. You said, that was before. Before what? Before 2 men tried to kill you. A silence. "They tried to kill you," she said. "They saw your face. They saw his face. They were going to leave witnesses on the floor, Eleanor. They weren't here for me. He didn't say they were here for you and the kid because I let you sit across from me in a place anyone could see. He didn't say I did this to you the moment Frankie said yes to a date. He didn't say it because she was already going to figure it out, and there was no version of saying it that didn't make her hate him faster than she was going to anyway. She did the math in the back of the truck. He could feel her doing it, the way the air changed. "Oh," she said. He looked at the road. "Oh, God." He kept looking at the road. "You son of a bitch." "Yeah." "You son of a bitch." "Yeah." "He's 5 years old." "I know how old he is." "He's 5 years old, and he saw a man's head. He was under the table. He was on the floor, and there was blood. There was..." "Eleanor, don't say my name. Don't say my goddamn name like we know each other. We don't know each other. I sat across from you for 40 minutes. You bought me meatloaf. You don't get to..." "Eleanor, he's 5. She broke on the last word. She didn't cry. She broke. The thing that had been holding her upright since she walked into that diner with a kid on her hip and a coat she'd taped from the inside finally went, and Vincent heard it go, and he heard her press her face harder into Oliver's hair, and he heard her say, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," over and over into her nephew's scalp, while the truck rolled north on the Dan Ryan and the wipers ticked back and forth across the windshield, clearing snow. Vincent did not say anything. There was nothing to say. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a tower on Upper Walker. The lobby was marble. The doorman was a former ranger named Marcus who'd been with the Callaway organization for 9 years and who had been on the phone with Frankie since the moment Vincent's truck turned onto Wacker. Marcus saw them coming. Marcus held the elevator. Marcus did not look at the woman or the child even once, which was a kindness, and Vincent registered it. The elevator was its own key. The penthouse was its own floor. The doors opened on a hallway. The hallway opened on a foyer. The foyer opened on a room. The room was very large and very quiet, and the entire west wall was glass, and the glass looked out at the river and the lake beyond it, and the snow falling sideways through the lights of the bridges. There were no photographs. There was a leather couch the color of a wet stone. There was a coffee table made of one slab of walnut. There was a fireplace that ran on gas and was not lit. There was nothing on the walls except a single black and white photograph of an empty road in a place that might have been the steppes of Asia and might have been the Badlands of South Dakota, and the photograph was not signed. Eleanor stood in the middle of all of it, with Oliver on her hip, and looked at it like she was looking at the surface of the moon. "Sit down," Vincent said. She didn't sit down. "Eleanor, don't. You need to sit down. You're shaking." She was shaking. Her whole frame was shaking. Oliver had gone quiet again, and that was worse than the crying. Vincent knew it was worse. He had seen it before. In other contexts, he was not going to think about right now. He went to the bar against the wall. He poured 2 fingers of something brown and expensive into a heavy glass. He came back. He held it out. "Drink this." "I don't..." "Drink it." She took it. She drank it. She coughed. She drank the rest. He took the glass back. "Sit down." She sat down. On the leather couch, with the kid still on her lap, his head against her shoulder, his cheek wet, his eyes closed, but not asleep. Vincent could see the lashes moving. Vincent stayed standing. "I need to make some calls," he said. "When I come back, we are going to talk about what happens now. Until I come back, you do not move from this couch. You do not go near the windows. You do not answer any phone in this apartment. There is water in the refrigerator. There is a bathroom through that door. That's it. Do you understand?" "Are we prisoners?" He looked at her. "No." "It sounds like we're prisoners." "You're not prisoners. You're..." He stopped. He didn't have the word. "You're alive," he said finally. "I would like you to stay that way. I am asking you to please not make my job harder." "Your job?" "Yes. My job. My job tonight is keeping a woman and a 5-year-old who I dragged into something I should not have dragged them into from being killed by people I have spent my entire life making angry. That is my job. Tonight. So I am asking you, please, to sit on this couch and not move." It was the most words he had said in a row to anyone outside of Frankie in over 2 years. Eleanor looked up at him. There was something in her face he could not read. Anger, yes. Fear, yes. But also something underneath both of those that he didn't have a name for and didn't have time to learn. "Fine," she said. He went into the office. The office was off the main room behind a sliding pocket door of black walnut. There was a desk, there was a chair, there were 3 monitors that were currently dark. There was a landline phone that did not exist on any public record. There was a wall safe behind a hinged panel of bookshelves, and behind the safe there were things Vincent did not think about often. He closed the door. He picked up the phone. He called Manny first. "Boss." "Tell me. Cleanups en route. ETA 6 minutes. The waitress is being walked through it. The trucker took the money and is already past the city limits. The cook is the problem. The cook saw your face." "Then talk to the cook." "Yeah, we're talking to the cook." "Don't hurt him." A pause. "Boss." "I said don't hurt him, Manny. He's a fat man making minimum wage on Christmas Eve. Buy him a house in Florida. Buy him 2 houses. I don't care. He doesn't get hurt." "Understood." The shooters. Russians, both Bratva, both out of the Sokolov wing. The tall one's name was Andrei Volkov. The short one I don't know yet. We're running prints. They are not freelancers. Somebody paid for this from inside the Sokolov family, or somebody is using the Sokolov family to send a message. Why now? That's what I'm trying to figure out. The girl? A longer pause. What about the girl? Frankie says 6 people knew about the girl. You, him, Sal, Linda at the service, me, the girl herself. One of those 6 sold me. Manny breathed out through his nose. Vincent had known Manny since they were both 14 years old. Manny was the closest thing he had to a brother, and Vincent had killed both his actual brothers, although that was another story. You think it was the girl? I want to know if it was the girl. Boss, I want to know, Manny. I'll check. I'll have Sal run her. Bank accounts, phone records, any contact in the last 48 with any number we flag. I'll know by morning. Faster than that. I'll know by 4 a.m. Good. Boss? What? You don't think it's her? Vincent stared at the dark monitor. I don't know what I think, he said. He hung up. He stood in the dark office for a long time with his hand still on the receiver. Then he picked up the receiver again and he called Frankie. Vinny, why the Russians? I don't know. Frankie, I don't know, Vinny. The Albanian deal they haven't even shown up yet. They're coming in 2 weeks. Why would the Sokolovs care? Why would they go this hard before the deal is even on the table? Unless the deal is exactly the problem. A pause. Yeah. Unless someone told the Sokolovs the deal is happening and the Sokolovs decided the deal cannot happen. Yeah. Which means someone on our side talked to someone on their side. Yeah. Vincent closed his eyes. Sal. Don't say it. Sal drove me to that diner, Frankie. Sal has been with us I know how long Sal has been with us. So do you. So does everybody. Which is exactly the kind of person you turn if you want to turn somebody, because nobody looks at the man who has been with you forever. Vinny, please don't move on Sal until we know. I'm not moving on anyone until I know. Promise me. I don't make those promises, Frankie. You know that. He hung up. He stood in the dark office for another long time. Then he opened the door and walked back out into the main room. Eleanor was still on the couch. She had her arms around Oliver. Oliver had finally gone under, the way exhausted kids do, his mouth slightly open against her collarbone, one small hand fisted in the front of her sweater. The lights of the city were doing their thing on her face, half in shadow, half in cold blue light. She looked up at Vincent when he walked in. You're going to leave us here, she said. What? You're going to leave us here while you go do whatever you do. While you go and kill more people. I'm going to Don't. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know. Eleanor. I want to know one thing. What? She looked down at the kid. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead with the kind of tenderness that wasn't tenderness, that was something harder and older than tenderness. The tenderness of a woman who has been the only thing standing between a small person and the world for so long that the tenderness has gotten calluses on it. He's going to remember this, she said, forever. He's going to remember a man's head and a sound and his aunt on the floor of a truck. He's going to be 30 years old and he's going to be in a parking lot in the rain somewhere and he's going to smell something and his hands are going to start shaking and he's not going to know why. Because of tonight. Because of you. Vincent didn't say anything. So I want to know one thing, she said. Just one. And I want you to tell me the truth, because if you lie to me, I am going to know, and I'm going to walk out of here right now with him in my arms, and I'm going to take my chances in the snow. Ask. Did you know? Know what? When Frankie set this up, when he hired me, when he picked the diner and the time and put us across a table from each other, did you know there was a chance somebody was going to walk in and try to kill you? Vincent looked at her. He thought about every answer he could give her. He thought about saying no. He thought about saying, of course not. I would never have put you in danger. He thought about 100 soft, easy answers that would have let her sleep on his couch tonight without hating him. He thought about her face when she said, if you lie to me, I'm going to know. There's always a chance, he said. Vincent. There's always a chance, Eleanor. I'm a man. People want dead. I sit down in a restaurant. There's a chance. I get gas, there's a chance. I went to a doctor's appointment last March, there's a chance. I don't. Did you think it was likely? Tonight. He paused. Not likely. But possible. Possible, yes. And you sat down across a table from me anyway. Yes. With a child 4 feet away. Yes. You son of a bitch. I know. You absolute son of a bitch. I know. She put her face down against the top of Oliver's head. She did not say anything for a long time. I'm going to my sister's, she said finally. You can't. I'm going to my sister's. I'm going to wake her up, and I'm going to put him in her bed, and I'm going to sit in her kitchen until morning, and I'm going to figure out the rest of my life from there. So if you would call your driver or whoever the hell, I would. You can't. Stop saying I can't. Eleanor, listen to me. The men in the diner tonight, there is a system. There is a system to how this works. They go in, they find me, they finish the job. If they don't finish the job, somebody else gets sent. And before that somebody else gets sent, the people who sent the first crew make a list of every person they saw with me, of every face on every security camera, of every license plate in the parking lot, of every name on every receipt. They run that list. And anybody on that list who isn't me, anybody who could pick them out of a lineup, anybody who could give a statement, anybody who could be leverage, they go to that person's house at 4 a.m. and they take care of it. She stared at him. Your sister's house, he said. You showing up at 4 a.m. with the kid. That's exactly the kind of place they look. They will be there before you finish your coffee. You don't know that. I know that. I have done that. I have stood in the doorway of a row house in Pilsen at 4 a.m. waiting for somebody who thought she got home safe. I know what I'm telling you. He watched her face. He watched her understand. Oh God, she said. Quiet, like the word had been knocked out of her. You stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we figure out the rest. Tomorrow, we get you somewhere they cannot follow. But tonight you keep us. Tonight I keep you. She closed her eyes. The kid stirred in her lap. He made a small sleeping sound. She put a hand on the back of his head and held him to her. There's a guest room, Vincent said, down that hall. First door on the right. The bed is made. There are clothes. There are some women's clothes in the closet that should fit you. They were never worn. They were a gift I never sent. She didn't ask. He was grateful for that too. I'll be up all night, he said. Marcus is at the lobby. 2 more of my men are on this floor. Nobody gets to that door without going through 3 people and a key system. You and the kids sleep. You're safe in this apartment. As safe as you can be anywhere in this city tonight. She nodded. She stood up, slowly, with Oliver heavy in her arms. She started to walk toward the hall. She paused. She didn't look at him. In the diner, she said. Yeah, when the song was playing. You were crying. I wasn't crying. Yes, you were. He didn't say anything. Why? She said. He thought about lying. He had 100 lies queued up. He used them every day. They were his vocabulary, the same way other men had a vocabulary of jokes or sports scores or kindnesses. He didn't use any of them. My mother used to play that record, he said. A pause. Where is she? Dead. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. She nodded. She kept walking. She stopped again at the mouth of the hallway. The light from the kitchen was hitting her sideways, and it made the tear tracks on her face shine like wire. You're a bad man, she said. Not cruel, just observing. Yes. You're a really bad man. Yes. But you cried at a Christmas song. Yes. I don't know what to do with that. Neither do I. She went into the hallway. She didn't look back. The first door on the right opened and closed, and the apartment was very quiet. Vincent stood in the middle of his own living room for a long time. The lights of the city moved on his face. The wind made a low sound against the glass. The fireplace did not click on because he had not turned it on. He had not turned anything on except the lamp by the entry foyer. He realized, after a while, that he was still holding the cig. He looked down at it. It was a tool. He had cleaned it that morning. There were 2 rounds short in the magazine, and the slide was forward, and the hammer was uncocked, and his finger was indexed straight along the frame the way his finger was always indexed, because Vincent Calloway had been a careful man for 20 years. He had not been careful tonight. He had been careful with the gun. He had not been careful with the woman. He walked across the room. He set the cig on the walnut coffee table. He sat down on the leather couch where she had been sitting. The leather was still warm from her body. There was a small dark spot on the cushion next to him where one of her tears had fallen and not been wiped away. He put his face in his hands. He did not cry. He had used his year's allotment of tears in a roadside diner 2 hours ago. He just sat there. The phone in his pocket buzzed. He took it out. It was Manny. The message was 3 words long. "Vinny, call me." He called. "Tell me. Sal's gone." "What?" "Sal didn't show up for the pickup at midnight. We went to his house. Door was open. Coffee on the stove still warm. His car's in the garage. His phone's on the kitchen counter. His wallet's on the kitchen counter. His shoes are by the door." "You're telling me Sal walked out of his house in his socks?" "I'm telling you Sal walked out of his house in his socks, or somebody walked him out." A long silence. "Boss?" "Yeah. There's something else." "What?" "His wife. His wife and his daughter. They're not in the house either." Vincent stood up off the couch. "Manny." "Yeah. Get every man we have. Every single one. I want eyes on every Calloway property in this city in the next 30 minutes. I want the docks locked down. I want the warehouse on 47th locked down. I want the club in River North locked down. I want every safe house we have either occupied by one of ours or empty and dark. Do you understand?" "Understood." "And Manny." "Yeah." "Pull Marcus off the lobby." A beat. "Boss, Marcus is the only thing between you and—" "I know what Marcus is. I want him on this floor. Outside that door. Right now. Tonight." "Why?" Vincent looked down the hall. The door to the guest room was closed. The light underneath it was off. He could not hear anything from inside it. He could imagine a woman with her arms around a small boy in a bed in a strange room, both of them with their eyes open in the dark. "Because," he said, "if Sal is gone, and Sal knew about the meat, and Sal knew about the girl, then someone already knows she's here. And if someone already knows she's here—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Manny said very quietly, "I'm on my way." Vincent put the phone down. He picked the cig back up off the coffee table. He walked slowly toward the foyer, toward the front door of his own apartment, toward the long, dark hallway beyond it and the elevator at the end and the silent 42 floors of building between him and the street. Somewhere in that building, or somewhere just past it, in the snow and the wind and the long, bleeding heart of Chicago on Christmas Eve, a man named Sal, who had driven Vincent Calloway to school as a boy and to his father's funeral as a teenager and to a roadside diner as a man, was either dead or had become the worst kind of enemy. Vincent reached the front door. He put his hand on the deadbolt. And from somewhere on the other side of it, somewhere out in the hallway he could not see, somewhere past the elevator he could not hear, there came the soft, unmistakable sound of a boot on carpet. That was the sound. Soft, deliberate, the wrong side of the deadbolt. One step, then another. Then a pause. The kind of pause a man takes when he is listening through a door for breathing on the other side. Vincent did not breathe. He moved his hand off the deadbolt, the way you move your hand off a snake. Slow. Soundless. His weight shifted backward onto the ball of his left foot, and his right foot slid sideways across the marble of the foyer, and the cig came up to a low ready against his sternum, and his thumb confirmed the safety was off without his eyes ever leaving the brass plate at the center of the door. There was a peephole. He did not use it. A man who has lived this long does not put his eye against a peephole when there is a man on the other side, because a man on the other side with a suppressed weapon can drive around through that peephole and through the eye and into the brain in less time than it takes to register the muzzle flash. He moved laterally, out of the line of the door, into the small alcove where the umbrella stand was. His back went against the wall. The wall was 3 inches of poured concrete behind the drywall, because Vincent had paid for it to be poured concrete, because Vincent had not been a careless man until tonight. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice, very low, very close to the door. "Vinny, Vincent's hand did not move. His finger stayed indexed along the frame of the cig. Vinny, it's me. The voice was Marcus. The voice was the doorman. The voice was the former ranger who had been with the Callaway organization for 9 years, and who, 20 minutes ago, Vincent had told Manny to pull off the lobby and put on this floor. The voice was Marcus. Vincent did not move, because the voice was also 9 years inside the Callaway operation. And 9 years inside the Callaway operation was a long time to wait for the right moment. And Sal had been 31 years inside the Callaway operation, and Sal was either dead or gone in his socks. And a man who has been a careful man for 20 years does not unlock a door tonight just because the voice on the other side is one he has heard 1,000 times before. Marcus. Vinny, Manny called me up. He said, "How many of you out there?" "Just me." Step back from the door. 3 steps. Hands flat against the wall opposite. A pause. "Boss?" 3 steps. Hands flat. "I'm going to look through the peephole. If I see one hand, if I see 1 inch of you out of position, this conversation ends very badly for everyone." Another pause. Then the sound of 3 steps. Then the sound of palms going against drywall. Vincent leaned, fast. He put one eye against the peephole and then off it again, the way you check a corner with a mirror, the way they teach you in a basement in Bridgeport when you are 16 years old and your uncle is shouting at you in Italian and English at the same time. Marcus. Hands flat against the opposite wall. No one else in the hallway. No one in the cut between the elevator bank and the door. The elevator indicator was dark. Vincent threw the deadbolt. He opened the door 6 inches. The cig stayed at his hip, low, angled. Walk in slow. Hands where I can see them. Marcus walked in slow. Hands where Vincent could see them. He was a big man, 6'4", 230. Black skin gone gray at the temples, eyes that had seen the inside of Mosul and the inside of an Indianapolis hospital and the inside of more Callaway warehouses than he could count. He moved like a man who knew exactly how easy it would be to die in the next 30 seconds. And he was at peace with it, because Marcus had been at peace with it since 2004. Vincent closed the door behind him, bolted it, did not lower the gun. Manny. Manny is downstairs. He got here 6 minutes ago. He's putting 2 men in the stairwell, 2 more on 38, and he's got the building security feed mirrored to his phone. Sal? Nothing yet. Wife's car is still in the garage. Daughter's school bag is on the kitchen table. There's a glass of orange juice on the counter, half drunk. He didn't pack. He didn't run. Or he ran without his shoes because the people who took him didn't give him time to put them on. Or that. Vincent finally let the cig come down. Not holstered, just down. Why didn't you call up first? Marcus didn't answer right away. I did call up, boss. I didn't get a call. I called your cell 3 times while I was riding up the elevator. Vincent took the phone out of his coat pocket. The screen was dark. He pressed the side button. The screen stayed dark. He pressed it again, held it, counted. 5, 10, 15. The phone was dead. Vincent looked at the dead phone in his hand. He had charged it that afternoon. He had used it to make 2 calls, neither of them long. It had been in his pocket the entire night. It had been at 68% the last time he had looked at it, in the truck, on the Dan Ryan, when he had hung up on Frankie. A phone does not go from 68% to dead in 2 hours. A phone goes from 68% to dead in 2 hours when somebody has put something on it that is running in the background, eating the battery, broadcasting. Vincent's stomach went cold. He looked up at Marcus. Get Manny up here, right now. Up the stairwell, not the elevator. Boss? Up the stairwell. Marcus pulled his own phone. Marcus made the call. Vincent walked, slowly, into the kitchen. He set the dead phone on the marble of the island. He stared at it the way you stare at a thing you used to trust. He thought about the last 12 hours. The diner. Frankie. Manny. The drive. Every word he had said out loud while the phone had been in his pocket. Every name, every address, every coordinate. He had given them everything. He had been the leak. He had been the leak all night. There was a sound at the front door. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. The Callaway pattern. Vincent crossed back, threw the bolt, and Manny came in. Manny was 52. Manny had been Vincent's number 2 for 8 years and Vincent's friend for 38. Manny had a face like a clenched fist and the kind of mustache no one had worn unironically since 1989. And Manny was wearing a heavy black overcoat over a sweater that his wife had picked out for him because Manny did not believe in sweaters. "What is going on, Vinny?" Vincent slid the dead phone across the marble. "This phone has been on me all night. It just died. It was at 68% 2 hours ago. I want to know what's on it." Manny picked it up. He looked at the back of it. He looked at the screen. He looked up at Vincent. "You think somebody? I don't think anything yet. I want to know. Get it to Reggie. Tonight. Wake him up. I want a full forensic before morning. Reggie's gonna... I don't care. Wake him up." Manny nodded. He handed the phone off to Marcus, who slid it into a small lead-lined bag he produced from inside his coat, the way another man might produce a handkerchief. Marcus was useful in that way. Marcus had been useful in that way for 9 years. Vincent looked at Marcus. "You got a clean phone on you." Marcus pulled a black flip phone from his inner pocket. Cheap. Burner. 3 days old, probably. He set it on the marble. "Use this for the next 24. I'll get you a new daily by morning." "Good." Vincent picked up the burner. He held it in his hand. He felt the weight of it. He thought about every person he had ever called from a phone Sal had touched, every safe house he had ever named out loud in a car Sal had been driving, every conversation he had ever had with Frankie about a deal that Sal had been within earshot of, and he understood, suddenly, and with a clarity that felt like a knife between the third and fourth ribs, that he had been hemorrhaging information for an amount of time he could not yet calculate. He looked up at Manny. "How long have we been compromised?" "Vinny? How long, Manny?" "Best guess." "If Sal is the leak, if somebody has been inside the operation, how long?" Manny took a long, slow breath through his nose. "Months." "How many?" 3? 4? Maybe more. The Sokolov stuff doesn't make sense if it's less than 3 months. They moved on the Indiana shipment in October like they had the manifest. We thought they got it from a longshoreman. Maybe they didn't get it from a longshoreman. The Albanian deal. What about it? They knew. The Sokolovs. They knew it was coming. They knew the timing. They knew I was going to be at the diner tonight because they knew I was going through the motions for the meet. They sent 2 men with one job, and the job was to take me off the board before I could sign anything. They didn't send those men out of guesswork, Manny. They sent those men because somebody told them. Yeah. Somebody who knew the timeline, somebody who knew the diner, somebody who knew the girl. A pause. The girl. The girl, Manny. The girl who walked into that diner 40 minutes late, with a kid she didn't tell anybody she was bringing after a babysitter mysteriously canceled. Vinny. And who happened to be sitting across from me, in a position that made her face perfectly visible from the front door, when 2 shooters who had been waiting somewhere in the area got the call that I was inside. "Vinny, stop!" Vincent stopped. He had been pacing. He had not realized he was pacing. His right hand was open and closed at his side. His pulse was up. The cig was still in his other hand, and he made himself deliberately set it down on the marble next to the burner. "What?" "You need to slow down." "I am slowing down. I am thinking out loud." "You're thinking out loud about a woman in your guest room with a 5-year-old on her chest, and you are looking for a reason to put her in a chair in the basement, and we are not doing that tonight." "I am not..." "Vinny, listen to me." Manny had a voice. It was the same voice he had used at 14 years old when Vincent's father was on the kitchen floor and Vincent was screaming, and it had been the same voice ever since. It was a voice that worked on Vincent the way no other voice in the world worked on him. "You are exhausted. You are bleeding adrenaline. You have killed 2 men in the last 4 hours, and you have not slept in 30. You are looking at a woman who scared you in a diner, and you are looking for a reason to make her the villain, because if she is the villain, then the thing that happened in that diner, the thing where you cried, Vinny, don't make a face at me. I have known you since you were 9 years old. I know what you look like when you've been crying. If she's the villain, then that thing doesn't have to be real." "Manny, it's not her. You don't know that." "I know that. Sal's wife and daughter are gone. Sal's phone is on his counter. Sal's shoes are by the door. The leak is not a waitress, Vinny. The leak is the man who has been driving you to every meet for 11 years. Vincent looked at him. "You are sure?" "I am sure enough to bet your life on it, which is what I am doing right now. Vincent let the breath go that he had been holding without knowing he had been holding. Run her anyway. I'm already running her. Faster. Vinny. Faster, Manny. I want to know what she eats for breakfast. I want to know her sister's name. I want to know who the kid's father is. I want to know every job she has held since she was 15. I want to know if any of it touches Sal, if any of it touches the Russians, if any of it touches anything I should not have allowed near me. Do it tonight. Manny nodded. He pulled his own phone. He walked away down the hall to make calls. Marcus stayed. Marcus was good at staying. Vincent leaned his hands on the marble of the island. He looked at his own hands. His knuckles were white. His left hand had a small cut across the meat of the thumb that he didn't remember getting. Some piece of the napkin dispenser, probably. Or the ceramic mug when he came out of the booth. He had been bleeding a little, this whole time, into the cuff of his own shirt, and he had not noticed. He thought about Eleanor on the floor of the truck. He thought about the kid's face pressed against the back of her neck. He thought about her voice in the dark of the truck. You son of a bitch. He pushed off the marble. He walked down the hall. He stopped outside the guest room door. He stood there for a long minute, not knocking, listening. He could hear breathing on the other side. 2 sets. One slow and even. One slow and even, but with a small hitch every 4th breath, the way an adult breathes when the adult is trying very hard not to wake the child. She was awake. He knocked very softly with one knuckle. A pause. Yes. He opened the door 6 inches. The lamp on the bedside table was on, the lowest setting. Eleanor was sitting up against the headboard, fully dressed, on top of the covers. Oliver was curled in the crook of her arm, his face against her ribs, asleep so completely that one of his hands had gone slack in her sweater and was just hanging there. The stuffed rabbit was on the pillow beside them, missing the one ear it had been missing in the diner, and Vincent was strangely glad to see it had survived the night. Eleanor looked at him. She did not say anything. I need to ask you some questions, he said. Now. Now. He's asleep. I'll be quiet. So will you. I'll bring you out to the kitchen. Manny is in the office and Marcus is in the foyer, and neither of them is going to come into this room. The kid is safe. She looked down at Oliver. She looked back up at Vincent. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. She slid out from under the kid with the kind of slow muscle memory only a person who has put a small child to bed 1,000 times can manage. She pulled the comforter up over his shoulder. She tucked the rabbit against him. She walked past Vincent without looking at him and out into the hall. He closed the door very quietly behind her. In the kitchen, she sat on a stool at the island and folded her arms over her chest. She did not ask for anything. She did not look at the dead phone or the burner or the cig. She looked at Vincent. She waited. Your sister, he said. What about her? What's her name? Margaret. Maggie. Where does she live? Why? Eleanor? Why? He stopped. He thought about how to say it. Because I told my men to find out everything about you tonight. They are doing that right now. They will be done before sunrise. And if there is anything in your life that I am going to find out in a way that makes me not believe you, I would rather hear it from you here, while my friend Manny is still in the office and still telling me you are not the problem. Do you understand? She stared at him. Are you serious? I am very serious. You think I don't think anything. I am asking. You think I sold you out to the Russians. You think I, took a job at a coffee shop and a job at a restaurant and a third job tonight pretending to be your fake girlfriend so that I could get close enough to point you out to a hit team with my 5-year-old nephew as cover. I am asking. You son of a bitch. You said it. That's what you think. That's what you've been thinking the whole time. In the truck. In the hallway. When you handed me that drink, Eleanor. And I sat on your couch with him in my arms, and I let you tell me we had to stay because we weren't safe, and the whole time you were, Eleanor, listen to me. No. You listen to me. You listen to me, Vincent. She didn't know his last name, it occurred to him. She had only ever heard Vincent, and he had a strange feeling of relief that this was still true. You listen to me. I am not a player in your stupid little war. I am a woman with a sister whose life has been a slow-motion car wreck for 9 years. I work 2 jobs. I picked up a third one tonight because my landlord is raising the rent in February, and I cannot afford the difference. I had never heard your name before, Linda, from the service called me on Wednesday and told me to wear something nice and not ask questions. I do not know what a Sokolov is. I do not know what a Bratva is. I have never, in my entire life, owned a gun, taken a phone call from anyone who has owned a gun, or even thought about the kind of Eleanor. Life you live in, you arrogant, paranoid Eleanor. What? I believe you. She stopped. She stared at him. Then why are you asking? Because I have to know. Because 3 people are dead tonight, 4 if you count whatever is happening to my driver right now. And because I have a man in the next room who has been my friend for 30 years, and who is the only reason I am not already on a plane to a country with no extradition treaty. And because if I do not ask you every question I would ask anybody else, then I am being soft with you in a way I cannot afford to be soft with anybody tonight. She looked at him for a long time. What's the question? She said. Quiet. Where does your sister live? East Garfield Park. Off Madison. I'm not telling you the address. I don't need the address. I need to know if she has had contact in the last 48 hours with anyone you would not normally expect. Maggie has contact with people I would not normally expect every day of her life. Maggie has been an addict since she was 20. I do not know who she talks to. I do not know who she owes money to. That is exactly the problem. That has been exactly the problem for 9 years. That is why her son is asleep in your guest room and not asleep at her apartment. Has she asked you about your work in the last week? No? Has anybody? No. Has any number you don't recognize called you in the last 3 days? She paused. Yes. Vincent went still. When? 2 days ago. Yesterday morning. I didn't pick up. They didn't leave a voicemail. Show me. She took her phone out of her coat pocket. She unlocked it. She handed it to him. It was a 6-year-old Android with a cracked screen. The case had been a different color once and was now a uniform gray from being held too long by too many hands. He scrolled to the recents. The number was a 312 area code. Chicago. It had called twice, both times for less than 3 seconds. No voicemail. The number itself was a sequence Vincent did not recognize, but he did not need to recognize it. He photographed it with the burner Marcus had given him. He typed it into a message to Manny. 3 seconds later, Manny's response came back. Burner. Activated 11 days ago. Bought in cash at a kiosk in Lincoln Park. We are looking. Vincent handed Eleanor her phone back. Has anyone come to your apartment in the last week? My building has a buzzer. People come in and out all the time. Nobody has knocked on my door. No. Has the kid said anything strange? What? Has Oliver mentioned anyone? A man, a woman, somebody asking questions at his school, somebody who said hello to him on the playground. He's 5. 5-year-olds notice things. Has he said anything? She thought, no, nothing. He talks about his teacher. He talks about a girl in his class named Penelope, who he is in love with. He talks about a man on the train who had a dog yesterday. That's it. What man on the train? Oh, for what man on the train, Eleanor? A guy with a dog, a golden retriever. Oliver wanted to pet it. The guy let him pet it. The guy got off at grand. It was a guy on the train, Vincent, with a dog. What did he look like? I don't. Average, white, maybe 40, beard. He had a bear's hat on. Vincent, it was a dog. He filed it. He did not let it show on his face, but he filed it. A man on a train with a dog 2 days before 2 men with guns walked into a diner. It was nothing. It was almost certainly nothing. Almost certainly was not nothing enough. He looked at her. He let his shoulders come down a 1/4 inch. I am sorry, he said. She blinked at him. What? I am sorry for asking. I am sorry for thinking what I thought. I'm sorry for what happened in the diner. I'm sorry for what your nephew saw. I am sorry that you are sitting in this kitchen instead of in your sister's, even though if you were in your sister's, you would be dead, because that does not change that you are sitting in this kitchen and that I am the reason. I am sorry for all of it. She did not say anything. He had not apologized to anyone in 7 years. He found that he did not have anything else to say. Okay, she said finally. That was all. She got up from the stool. She walked back down the hall. She went into the guest room. She closed the door. He stood in the kitchen for a long time. Manny came out of the office. Reggie's on his way to the building. He's going to meet Marcus in the lobby. Phone analysis by 4. The number that called her, we've got 3 of our guys on it. The address it was bought from has cameras. We'll have a face by morning. Good. You okay? No. You want a drink? No. Manny nodded. He walked past Vincent. He poured himself a drink. He came back. He sat on a stool. He looked at the kitchen. You ever notice, Manny said, you don't have any food in this apartment. I don't eat here. You don't eat anywhere, Vinny. I have not seen you eat a meal in this calendar year. You drink coffee. You drink scotch. You push food around plates in restaurants like a divorced woman. Manny, I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. A silence. She doesn't trust you, Manny said. No. She shouldn't. No. You're going to keep her here. Until I figure out where to put her where she won't die. Yes. And then what? And then I let her go. Manny took a drink. Vinny. What? You don't let people go. Vincent did not answer. They sat there. The wind moved against the windows. Somewhere below them, the city did the thing it did at night, which was to keep being the city no matter what had happened in any of the buildings inside it. The burner buzzed. Manny picked it up. He read the screen. He looked up. Vinny. What? Reggie's downstairs. He says the phone is... He wants you to come down. Down where? To the loading dock. He says he doesn't want to bring it in the building. Vincent went very still. He doesn't want to bring my phone into my own building. That's what he said. Vincent picked up the cig off the marble. He slid it back into the holster under his arm. He buttoned his coat. He looked at Manny. You stay with them. Vinny, you stay with them, Manny. Marcus comes with me. You sit in this kitchen, and you do not leave it until I am back in this room, and I am the one telling you to leave it. If anything comes through that door that is not me, you put it down. Do you understand? Yeah. Say it. I understand. Good. He started for the door. He stopped. He looked down the hall at the guest room. The light under the door was off now. He went back to the kitchen. He picked up the Mont Blanc pen that he had given to Oliver in the diner. Manny had pulled it from Vincent's pocket on the way up the elevator because Manny was a man who noticed things, and he set it on the marble next to where Eleanor had been sitting. He left it there. He went out the front door with Marcus behind him. The freight elevator opened onto the loading dock at the back of the building. Concrete floor, yellow paint markings. A garage door rolled 3/4 of the way down against the snow. The dock was lit by 2 industrial fluorescents and smelled like cardboard and motor oil and the cold air coming in under the door. Reggie was standing under one of the fluorescents. Reggie was 28 years old. Reggie had a master's degree in electrical engineering from a school in Boston and a juvenile record that had been expunged by a judge Vincent owned. Reggie wore a hoodie under a North Face jacket and round wire glasses, and Reggie was the smartest person Vincent had ever paid money to. Reggie was holding Vincent's phone in his gloved hand. Reggie looked, for the first time in the 4 years Vincent had known him, scared. Boss? Talk. It's not what I thought. What do you mean it's not what you thought? I thought it was a piggyback. Like a tracker. Something a guy slipped onto your phone in a restaurant. Stick it on the case, walk away, you carry it around for a week. They get your movements. I have seen those 100 times. And this isn't that. What is it? Reggie held the phone up to the fluorescent. This phone has a chip in it, inside the body, soldered in. Not aftermarket, not glued on, soldered, underneath the logic board. To put this chip in this phone, somebody had to take the phone apart down to the frame and put it back together. Somebody had to have the phone for at least 3 hours, in a place with a clean bench and a heat gun and a microscope. Somebody had to know how to do it without leaving a single mark on the outside of the device. Somebody had to Reggie. This wasn't a guy in a restaurant, boss. This was an inside job. This was somebody who took your phone off your nightstand or out of your pocket while you were asleep or out of your jacket while you were in a shower, and they had it long enough to do surgery on it. And then they put it back. And then they did the same thing again, recently, to install an update, because the firmware on the chip is dated 8 days ago. Vincent looked at the phone. Who has been in my apartment in the last 8 days? Reggie did not answer. Marcus did not answer. Vincent thought. his housekeeper. Once a week, cleared by Manny 6 years ago. Body cavity searched before she came up, every time by a woman they brought in for the purpose. Never alone with anything for more than 30 seconds. The plumber, 3 weeks ago. Watched the entire time by Marcus. Did not touch the phone. Frankie, Manny, Sal. That was it. That was the entire list of people who had been alone in any room of Vincent Calloway's apartment in the last 12 months. He looked up. Marcus was watching him. Reggie was watching him. Reggie said very quietly, "Boss, the chip in this phone is not Russian. It's not Albanian. It's not Sokolov surplus. I've seen Sokolov surplus. This is American. This is custom. This is the kind of thing that comes out of one shop in Virginia and one shop in Maryland, and that is sold to exactly one kind of customer." Vincent felt the cold come into his chest. Federal. Federal. Vincent stood in the loading dock under the fluorescent and felt the entire night rearrange itself inside his head. Not the Russians. Not the Sokolovs. Not Sal selling him out to a rival family. Federal. He had been listened to, recorded, tracked, and watched for months by the United States government. Every conversation he had had with Frankie, every drive with Sal, every phone call to Manny, every word about the Albanians, every word about the port, every name, every coordinate, every meet, and the men in the diner tonight had not been Sokolov shooters. The men in the diner tonight had spoken Russian and worn Russian clothes and carried Russian guns because somebody had wanted them to look exactly like Sokolov shooters. Somebody had wanted Vincent Calloway, the most paranoid man in the East Coast underworld, to spend his Christmas Eve tearing his own organization apart, looking for a leak in the Russian direction, while the real leak was federal and patient and had been listening for months, and had finally decided, tonight, to escalate, to force him into a corner, to make him run, to make him do something stupid, to make him kill in a public place in front of civilian witnesses on a holiday, so that the indictment they had already prepared somewhere in a building in the South Loop could have its capstone. 2 dead Russians in a diner. Cell phone evidence of every Calloway internal call for 90 days. A room full of frightened witnesses. A waitress named Doris. A trucker. A waitress and a 5-year-old boy. Vincent's stomach turned over. Reggie? Yeah. How long until this chip stops broadcasting? It stopped when the phone died. The battery was rigged to die at exactly the moment they wanted it to die. They needed it dead before you got home because they didn't want you doing what we are doing right now. They wanted you reacting. They wanted you panicking. They wanted you running into your apartment with a woman and a kid and locking the door and waiting for the next move. And the next move is... Reggie looked at him. Boss, if I were them, the next move was made 20 minutes ago. The next move is a phone call. The next move is somebody in a federal building tonight is signing a warrant. The next move is a tactical team is being briefed right now, and they are going to be in the lobby of this building at sunrise with a battering ram and an indictment and cameras. Vincent? That was Marcus. Vincent looked at him. Marcus was holding his own phone. The screen was lit. He turned it around. It was a notification from the building security system. The kind that pinged whenever anyone authorized came onto the elevator. The notification said 3 black SUVs had just pulled up to the front of the tower. The notification was time-stamped 41 seconds ago. The notification said the men getting out of them were wearing FBI windbreakers. And on the small thumbnail of the security feed at the bottom of the screen, in the back seat of the lead SUV, Vincent could see very clearly the slumped silhouette of a man with his hands cuffed behind him and a swollen, bleeding face. And even at that distance, even at that resolution, even with the snow on the windshield and the streetlights orange behind him, Vincent recognized Sal. That was who was in the back of the SUV. That was the swollen face. That was the slumped silhouette. Sal Marino, 63 years old, who had driven Vincent's father to a wedding in 1991, and Vincent's mother to a hospital in 1994, and Vincent himself to every meaningful meeting of the last 11 years, was sitting handcuffed in the back of a federal vehicle parked at the front of the tower with blood on his chin and one eye swollen shut. He had not run. He had not been taken by the Sokolovs. He had been taken by federal agents sometime tonight, in his socks, in his own kitchen, because they had needed him out of the way before they came for Vincent, and because they had also needed him close enough to walk through the lobby in front of the cameras in case Vincent did the thing Vincent was about to do, which was decide to fight. Vincent looked at the thumbnail. He looked at the time on the corner of Marcus's screen. He had, by his own count, about 90 seconds before the elevator indicator at the back of this loading dock would start to climb. Reggie? Yeah. Go home. Boss? Go home, Reggie. Out the back. Now. You were never here. The phone is in a dumpster somewhere on Wells Street. You have not seen me since Tuesday. Reggie nodded once. Reggie was the smartest person Vincent paid money to, and Reggie did not need to be told twice. He pulled his hood up, shoved both hands deep into his jacket pockets, and walked out into the snow under the half-rolled garage door without looking back. He was gone in 11 seconds. Vincent turned to Marcus. How long do we have? They are still in the lobby. They are talking to the night manager. The night manager is on our payroll, but the night manager is also a 41-year-old man with 2 kids and a mortgage, and the night manager is going to break in about 3 minutes if they put real pressure on him, 5 if they are patient. They will not be patient. No. How many? 12 in the lobby. I count 2 more at the back of the building in the alley. There is a vehicle at the southwest corner. I cannot see how many men are in it, but I am assuming 4. Call it 18 agents total, plus the SUVs. Helicopter. I cannot hear one. Snipers. Possible on the building across the street. I would put one there if I were them. The roof has line of sight to your windows. Vincent took that in. 12 in the lobby, 2 in the alley, 4 in the corner SUV, possibly 1 on the roof opposite. A federal tactical team that had been briefed and was already moving. They were not going to negotiate. They were going to come up the stairs, and they were going to come up the elevator simultaneously, and they were going to come fast because they had a man in handcuffs. They could parade in front of the cameras, and they had an indictment. They had been drafting for 90 days, and they had the absolute confidence of men who knew the law was finally on their side. Vincent had 2 minutes, maybe 3. He turned and walked back to the freight elevator. He hit the button. The car was still on this floor. The doors opened. He stepped in. Marcus stepped in behind him. 42. The doors closed. The car began to climb. Vincent stood with his back against the wall of the elevator and felt his own pulse against the inside of his shirt collar. It was very fast and very steady. It was the pulse of a man who had decided, somewhere between the loading dock and the elevator car, what the next 2 hours of his life were going to look like. He was not going to fight 18 federal agents. He was not going to die in his own building on Christmas Eve. He was not going to let a 5-year-old boy wake up in the morning in an apartment surrounded by SWAT and watch his aunt put her hands on top of her head. He was going to do the thing he had not done in 20 years. He was going to run. The elevator chimed. 42. The doors opened. Manny was standing in the kitchen with a glass in his hand and his coat already on, because Manny had always been able to read Vincent's face from across a room and had been doing it since they were boys. Vinny. Federal, 12 in the lobby, indictment. They will be in this hallway in 9 minutes. Sal is in the back of an SUV out front. He has been turned or he has been beaten into looking like he has been turned. Either way, he is no use to us tonight. Manny set the glass down very carefully on the marble. He did not ask if Vincent was sure. He did not ask how Vincent knew. He had seen the face Vincent was wearing, and he knew that face the way other men knew the faces of their own wives. What do you need? The car in the garage on level 3. The blue Lexus, not the Suburban. The Suburban they will track inside 10 blocks. The Lexus is clean, registered to a corporation that does not exist on any FBI flowchart we have ever seen. Keys are in the lockbox behind the panel in the laundry. I need it pulled out and pointed at the south ramp in 4 minutes. Done. I need the bag from the safe. Which one? The black one. The one with the... I know which one. I will get it. Marcus. Boss. The woman and the kid. Yes. They're coming with us. A beat. Boss. Marcus. With respect, we move faster without shot. They are coming with us. Marcus did not say anything else. Marcus closed his mouth and nodded once and went to the front door to listen. Vincent walked, fast, down the hall to the guest room. He did not knock this time. He opened the door and the light from the hall fell across the bed in a pale rectangle, and Eleanor was already sitting up, the comforter pulled around her shoulders, her eyes open and very awake, because somewhere in the last 40 seconds, the apartment had changed around her and she had felt it. Get up. What's Get up. Right now. Coat on, boots on, put his boots on him. We are leaving. She did not argue. She slid out of bed. She had not undressed. She pulled her coat off the back of the chair where she had hung it. She knelt by Oliver and she scooped the kid out of sleep with the absolute economy of a person who had done this kind of thing in the middle of the night before, in other apartments, in other emergencies, in the long bad years of her sister's life. Oliver made a small sound. Shh, baby, shh. We are going on a ride, shh. Aunt Ellie, shh. She got his boots on him. 1, 2. She did not bother with his hat. The hat was still on the floor of the diner somewhere, Vincent realized, with a yellow yarn ball on top of it that nobody was ever going back for. Stuff, Oliver mumbled, half asleep. What? Stuff. The rabbit. He meant the rabbit. The one-eared stuffed rabbit on the pillow. Eleanor grabbed it without breaking motion and pushed it into the front of his coat and zipped him up over it. She turned to Vincent. Where are we going? Out. Out where? Eleanor? I will tell you everything later. Right now I need you to follow me, to do exactly what I say, and to not ask another question for the next 11 minutes. She looked at him. She nodded. He turned and walked out of the room, and she followed him with Oliver on her hip, and her own coat half-buttoned, and her hair coming loose from where she had pulled it back, and behind them in the bed the pillow still held the shape of where a small boy had been sleeping 90 seconds ago. Manny met them in the foyer with the bag. The bag was black ballistic nylon, double-zipped, the size of a large duffel. Inside it, Vincent knew without looking, was $300,000 in non-sequential American currency. A second set of identification documents in 3 different names that all had 3 different birthdays, 2 clean phones, a backup pistol with 2 extra magazines, a set of car keys for a car that did not exist on any database, and a folded brown envelope that contained the deed to a property in a small town in northern Michigan that Vincent had not visited in 9 years. It was the bag Vincent had kept in his safe since he was 26 years old. It was the bag every man like Vincent had in his safe somewhere. It was the bag you only used once. Manny handed it to him. Vinny. Yeah. Where are you going? I do not know yet. Tell me when you do. I will not be telling anyone, Manny, not even you. Especially not you. You're going to be in a federal interview room before noon tomorrow, and they are going to ask you where I am, and the truth is going to be the only thing that keeps you alive. Manny's mouth went tight. Vinny, listen to me. You do not have to. I have to. They have 90 days of recordings. They have me on tape ordering things I should not have ordered. They have me on tape moving money I should not have moved. They have me on tape talking about the docks and the Albanians and at least 4 bodies. There is no version of tonight where I walk out of this building and go to a courtroom. There is no version. You know it. I know it. The men in the lobby know it. Vinny, you take care of the operation. You take care of Frankie. You take care of yourself. If they ask you where I am, you tell them you do not know, because you will not. Vinny, please. Vincent put his hand on Manny's shoulder. It was the first time in 8 years he had touched another man without it being a threat. You have been a good friend, he said. He turned away before Manny could answer. He did not look at him again. Eleanor was watching this exchange with her arms full of Oliver and her face the color of newsprint. She did not understand what she was watching exactly, but she understood the shape of it. She understood that the man in the kitchen and the man in front of her had just said goodbye in a way that meant something more than goodbye. Move, Vincent said. Service stairwell. Behind the laundry. We go down to garage 3. We do not stop. We do not talk. We do not look at any of the cameras. Marcus is on point. I am behind you. Do not get more than 4 feet from him. Vincent, move. She moved. Marcus opened the service stairwell door. It was a narrow concrete tube of a thing, painted industrial gray, lit by exposed fluorescence at every landing. The stairs went down 42 floors. Vincent had walked them once, 6 years ago, when he had bought the apartment, because Vincent did not buy an apartment he had not personally walked the escape route of. He had not walked them since. His thighs were going to feel it tomorrow. If there was a tomorrow. They went down. Marcus took 2 at a time, fluid, silent, his right hand under his coat. Eleanor went 1 at a time, the kid heavy in her arms, her free hand on the metal railing. Vincent went directly behind her, the bag on his shoulder, his eyes on every landing above them and every landing below them simultaneously. 42. 41. 40. The sound of their boots was very loud in the stairwell. Eleanor's breathing was very loud in the stairwell. Oliver was awake now, fully awake, his eyes huge in the fluorescent light, his face pressed into her neck. 38. Vincent's burner buzzed against his thigh. He pulled it out, one-handed. Read the screen. It was from Manny. They are in the elevator. 12, coming up, faster. Faster, Vincent said. Eleanor did not have faster. Eleanor was already moving as fast as she could move with a 40-pound child in her arms. He saw it in her face. He saw the calculation. He saw her start to apologize. He took the kid. He did it in one motion. He reached around her on the landing of 36, and he lifted Oliver out of her arms and he settled the boy against his own chest, one hand under the small body, one hand free for the railing, the bag still on his shoulder. Oliver made a small noise of alarm. Eleanor made a small noise of alarm. Hold on, kid. Oliver held on. His small arms went around Vincent's neck. His face went against Vincent's collarbone. He smelled like sleep and crayon and the wool of his own jacket. And Vincent had not held a child since he was 9 years old, and his cousin was a baby, and he had forgotten how a child weighed nothing and everything at the same time. Go, he said to Eleanor. She went. Faster. Now. Without the kid. She took the stairs 2 at a time. Marcus glanced over his shoulder, registered the new configuration, and pushed his own pace harder. 30, 28, 26. Above them, very faint, the sound of a stairwell door opening 40 floors up. The sound of boots. The sound of a man's voice saying clear in the flat-clipped tone of a federal team sweeping an empty apartment. Vincent's heart was hammering against the kid's small body. He could feel it. The kid could feel it. The kid did not say anything. 20, 18, 16. Eleanor stumbled. Her boot caught on the lip of a stair. She went down on one knee, hard, the railing scraping her palm. Marcus was on her in a second. He pulled her up by the elbow. He did not say anything. He did not slow. She kept going. 10, 8, 6. The stairwell door at Garage 3 came up under their feet. Marcus hit it with the bar. The door swung outward into the deep concrete cold of a parking garage at 3 in the morning on Christmas Eve, and the air that came in smelled like motor oil and frozen concrete, and the metal smell of a city that had been frozen so hard for so many days, the metal itself had started to taste different. The blue Lexus was idling 30 feet away. Manny had pulled it out himself. Manny was already gone, back up the service elevator, back to the apartment, back to whatever was about to happen to him, because he was the man with his name on a half-dozen properties and his face on every camera in the building. The driver's door of the Lexus was open. The engine was on. The headlights were off. Vincent got Eleanor into the passenger seat. He pushed Oliver into her lap. He threw the bag into the back. He slammed the door. He went around the front of the car at a run, his coat flapping behind him in the cold, the cig still snug under his arm. Marcus opened the back driver's side door and got in behind Vincent. South ramp. South ramp. Vincent dropped into the driver's seat, killed the dome light, threw the car into drive, and the Lexus moved. He did not turn the headlights on. He drove with the parking lights and his own knowledge of the geometry of the garage. Down ramp 3 to ramp 2. Around the column. Through the gate at the south end, which was a card access gate that was already opening because Manny had triggered it from upstairs. Out into the alley behind the building, where the snow was coming down in heavy, slow flakes, and there were no other cars and no people and no sign that 2 FBI agents were supposed to be at the back of the building, because the 2 FBI agents who were supposed to be at the back of the building were 40 feet to the north, watching the loading dock, and the south ramp came out on the wrong side of their cordon. Vincent had picked this car. Vincent had picked this ramp. Vincent had picked this building. He had picked all of it for tonight, and he had not known it. He turned right. He turned right again. He merged into the empty pre-dawn traffic on Wacker Drive, and he turned the headlights on because a car with no headlights on Wacker at 3 a.m. was a car that drew attention. And he eased into the left lane, and he drove like a man going home from a Christmas Eve party. And 3 blocks behind him, the federal team was still climbing the stairwell to his empty apartment. He had 11 minutes before they realized. Maybe 12. He drove. Vincent? Eleanor's voice was small. Not yet. Vincent. Eleanor, not yet. I need to drive. I need to think. Hold the kid. Do not say anything for 10 minutes. She did not say anything for 10 minutes. She held the kid. Oliver had gone completely silent, his face still pressed against her, his eyes open. He was not crying. He had not cried since the diner. Vincent did not know what that meant, and he was afraid to know. Marcus was in the back seat with a phone open, watching 3 different feeds at once, his face lit blue. They are in the apartment now. They are sweeping. Manny is in the living room. They have him cuffed. They are not hurting him. Yet. Frankie. Frankie's house just had 2 SUVs pull up. They are going through his front door. Sal? Sal is being driven to the South Loop, federal building. He will be in an interview room inside 20 minutes. How long until they know I am not in the apartment? They know already. They have not put it on the radio yet because they do not want to tip anyone off, but they know. They are pulling traffic cams, every camera within 20 blocks. They are going to find the Lexus on a camera in the next 40 minutes if we stay in the city. Then we do not stay in the city. Vincent took the next exit. He merged onto I-90 westbound. The expressway was almost empty. The salt trucks had been through. The pavement was a clean black ribbon under the yellow lights. The snow was thinning the further out they went, the storm shifting north, and Vincent let the Lexus settle at 73 miles an hour, which was 4 miles over the limit and would not flag any speed enforcement camera, and he drove. Vincent. What? Eleanor's voice now, not Marcus. You are running. Yes. From the police. From the FBI. From the FBI. You are running from the FBI. With me and with him. Yes. Why are we in this car? He looked over at her. The dashboard light was very faint. Her face was half lit. Her eyes were wet and her mouth was tight, and she was looking at him like a person looks at someone who has just told them their house is on fire. Because if I had left you in that apartment, by sunrise tomorrow, you and the kid would have been in federal custody as material witnesses in a multi-state RICO case, and your face and his face would have been on the front page of every newspaper in this state. And the people I have spent 20 years making angry, the real ones, the Sokolovs, the actual ones, would have known exactly who you were and where to find you, and the Federal Protection Program is a fairy tale, Eleanor. It is a thing they tell you about on television. In practice, it is a 1-bedroom apartment in a city you have never been to with a marshal who comes by once a month, and the people I am talking about find people in those apartments inside 6 months on average. You would be dead before Easter, both of you. Oh, yes. Oh, God. Yes. And if I run with you, you have a chance. A chance. A real one. I have spent 20 years preparing for this night, Eleanor. I have papers. I have money. I have a place. I have a route. I have everything any reasonable person has built for the day every other version of their life ends, and I have 1 extra seat in the car, and 1 extra set of papers I can adapt, and 1 extra place at the table, and I am offering it to you because I am the reason you need it. She did not say anything. The Lexus went through the toll plaza at Hinsdale. The transponder in the dash was registered to a man who did not exist. Nobody flagged anything. What is the place? Northern Michigan, Upper Peninsula, a house on a lake. The lake is small and the house is small and the road is private and the snow is going to be 4 feet deep for the next 3 months and nobody has been there in 9 years. The deed is in a name nobody is going to look for. The neighbors are all summer people. We will be alone. How long? Until I know they have stopped looking. 6 months? A year? A year? Maybe longer. And then I move you. I get you a new name. I get you a passport. I get you and the kid out of the country to somewhere with weather you have never imagined, and a school he can start fresh in and a life that does not have me in it. And then we never see each other again. She turned and looked out the window. The exit signs went by. Hinsdale, Naperville, Aurora. Oliver had fallen asleep against her chest. His small face was relaxed for the first time all night. His mouth was slightly open. His 1 mittened hand was curled into a fist around the strap of her coat. Vincent. What? You are doing this for him. A pause. Yes. Not for me. For both of you. But mostly for him. He did not answer. She did not push. The Lexus moved west through the empty dawn. They drove for 2 hours without speaking. Marcus dozed in the back, the way operators sleep, half awake, his hand still on the phone. The dashboard clock said 5:14 a.m. when Vincent finally took the exit for a small town off the interstate near the Wisconsin border. He pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station. He did not stop at the pump. He pulled around back behind the building into the lot where the truckers parked. A car was waiting for them. It was a dark green Subaru Outback, 8 years old, with Wisconsin plates and a roof rack, and the kind of mud spatter up the side panels that said it had been driven on actual roads in actual weather. The driver got out as they pulled up. The driver was a woman, mid-50s, heavy winter coat, gray hair pulled back. She did not look at Vincent. She did not say a word. She walked to the driver's side of the Lexus, took the keys Vincent handed her through the window, walked around to the Subaru, removed a manila envelope from the glove box, walked back to the Lexus, handed Vincent the envelope and a set of keys to the Subaru, got into the Lexus, and drove away. The whole exchange took 47 seconds. She was an asset Vincent had paid $8,000 a year for 9 years to maintain. Tonight had been the one night he had ever needed her, and she had been ready. He shifted everyone to the Subaru. Eleanor did not ask. Eleanor had passed the point of asking. She moved the kid. She got into the front seat of the new car. She put her hand on Oliver's chest and felt his breathing and closed her eyes for 1 second and opened them again. Marcus got into the back. Vincent got behind the wheel. The Lexus had been a beautiful car. The Subaru was an invisible car. Nobody on a highway looked at a Subaru. Nobody at a rest stop looked at a Subaru. The Subaru was the right car for the next 9 hours, the way the Lexus had been the right car for the first 2. He pulled back onto the interstate. He drove. The sun came up somewhere over central Wisconsin. It came up gray, the way it came up in late December over the Midwest, a slow paling of the sky from one shade of charcoal to another. The snow had stopped completely by the time they crossed into the Upper Peninsula at 11 in the morning. The roads got narrower, the trees got bigger, the towns thinned out. By 2 in the afternoon, they were on a county road north of nothing. By 3, they were on a private road, gated. The gate opened by a key in the manila envelope. By 3:30, the Subaru came around a bend in a stand of birches, and there it was. The house. It was small. 1 story. Cedar siding gone gray with weather. A green metal roof. A wood stack 12 feet long along one wall. The firewood split 3 years ago and cured perfectly. A small dock down a short slope to a frozen lake the color of pewter. No other houses visible in any direction. No power lines visible because the power lines came in underground. No tracks in the snow leading up to the door because nobody had been here in 9 years. Vincent stopped the Subaru in front of the house. He killed the engine. The silence was enormous. Eleanor was looking at the house. She was looking at the house the way a person looks at a thing they have given up imagining. "This is yours." "Yes." "You built it." "My father did, before I was born. He used to come up here in the summers. He brought me here once, when I was 7. After he died, I bought it back from the cousin who inherited it. I have been keeping it in case." "In case of what?" "In case of tonight." She nodded. She did not move. "Eleanor." "Yeah." "Inside. We need to get the kid inside. I need to get the heat on. We have been outside long enough." "Yeah." She did not move. He waited. She looked at him. Across the front seat. In the gray afternoon light. With the kid asleep on her chest and her eyes raw and her hair coming loose at her temples, in the way it had been coming loose at her temples since the moment she walked into the diner 13 hours ago. "I do not know you," she said. "No." "I have known you for 1 day." "Yes." "I am sitting in a car at a house at the end of a road in a state I have never been to with a child on my lap, and 3 federal black SUVs full of men with guns somewhere behind us looking for both of us. And the only person who can tell me whether I live until February is a man I have known for 1 day." "Yes." "That is insane." "Yes." "I should hate you." "You probably should." She looked at him. The kid was still asleep. The trees behind the house moved a little in a wind they could not feel inside the car. The dashboard ticked as the engine cooled. "Why are you doing this?" she said. "Really? Not the answer you gave me on the interstate. The real one." He thought about it. He thought about the diner, the carol on the speakers, the yellow sun the kid had drawn, the way she had leaned across the table and offered him something he had not been offered in 20 years, for free, because of a song. He thought about every lie he had told a woman in his life. He had told a lot of them. He looked at her. "Because for 40 minutes in a diner, you were nice to me," he said. "And nobody has been nice to me in a very long time. And I have killed for less." She stared at him. "That is not a good reason." "No. That is a terrible reason." "I know." "Vincent." "Yeah. What kind of man are you?" He thought about it. "I do not know yet," he said. "I have been one kind of man for a very long time. I do not know what kind of man I am going to be starting tomorrow. I have not done this before." She kept looking at him. Then she nodded. She opened the door of the Subaru. The cold came in. She stepped out into the snow with the kid against her shoulder, and she stood there for a second looking up at the gray sky and the gray house and the gray lake, and she took a long breath. "Okay," she said. He got out. He went around the car. He took the bag from the back seat. Marcus got out and started walking the perimeter of the house, his right hand under his coat. Vincent walked Eleanor up the 3 wooden steps to the front door. He used the key from the envelope. The lock turned heavy and slow because it had not been turned in 9 years, but it turned. He pushed the door open. The smell of a closed house, cedar, dust, cold stone, the faint sweetness of old wood. He went in first. He checked the front room. He checked the kitchen. He checked the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom and the small den off the back with the wood stove. There was nobody inside. There had not been anybody inside in 9 years. He came back. "Come in." She came in. She set Oliver down on the long leather couch in the front room, still asleep. She pulled a wool blanket off the back of the couch and laid it over him. She turned and looked at the house. "It is beautiful," she said. "It is cold. I will fix that." He went to the stove. He opened the door. The firewood was where he had left it 9 years ago, stacked dry inside the iron belly of the thing. He laid the kindling. He struck a match. The fire caught the way a fire catches when the wood is good and the chimney is true. He shut the door. He stood up. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. He had not eaten in 20 hours. He had not slept in 36. He had killed 2 men, packed a life, run from a federal team, driven 600 miles, and brought a woman and a child to a house at the end of a road. And his hands were finally, now, allowed to shake. He pressed them flat against his thighs. Marcus came in the back door. "Perimeter is clean. No tracks but ours. No fresh trails in any direction. The road is the only way in and the gate is locked behind us. I'm going to do a wider sweep at first light tomorrow." "Good." "Boss?" "Yeah." "We made it." Vincent looked at him. "We have made it through tonight." "Yeah." "That is not the same thing." Marcus nodded. Marcus knew. Marcus had been a ranger, and Marcus had been on Vincent's payroll for 9 years, and Marcus understood very well that the thing they had not made it through yet was a very long list of nights, and that one of those nights, sometime in the next 6 months, somebody was going to find them. The Sokolovs, the Federals, somebody Manny had not been able to keep quiet, somebody Frankie had given up under questioning, somebody who knew about a house on a lake and a name nobody was supposed to know. Somebody. The fire was catching. The room was beginning to warm. Oliver slept on the couch, the rabbit pressed against his chest under the blanket. The way a 5-year-old sleeps when the body finally accepts that the bad thing has, for now, stopped. Eleanor sat on the floor beside the couch, with her back against it, and her hand on Oliver's foot through the blanket. She was looking at the fire. Vincent stood by the window. Outside, the gray afternoon was sliding toward gray evening. The lake was a flat sheet of metal. The trees were black against it. Nothing moved. Nothing at all moved. He looked. He kept looking. He looked at the place where the private road came out of the trees 1/2 mile away, the only place from which a vehicle could approach the house, and he watched it for a long time, and there was nothing, and there was nothing, and there was nothing. And then, a flicker, a movement, a small dark shape at the very edge of the trees, 1/2 mile out, that did not belong there. Vincent's hand went to the cig. He squinted. He stepped closer to the glass. The shape did not move again for a long time, long enough that he almost let himself believe it had been an animal, a deer, a coyote, the light playing on a branch. Then it moved. It moved out from behind the tree, and it was a man, and the man was wearing white, and the man had a long thing in his hands, and the long thing had a scope on the end of it, and the man was on one knee in the snow, and the man was lifting the long thing to his shoulder, and the man was bringing the rifle to bear on the house? Vincent did not think. There was no thinking left in him. There was only the body, and the body had been preparing for this exact half-second for 30 years. Down. The word came out flat, low, no louder than a man clearing his throat. Marcus heard it the way Marcus heard everything. Marcus moved. "Eleanor, floor, take the kid behind the stove." She did not ask. She did not look at him. She pulled Oliver off the couch in one motion, the blanket still around him, and she went sideways and low across the hardwood and behind the heavy iron belly of the wood stove. The only thing in that front room that would stop a rifle round, and she went down on her knees with her body curved over the child, the way a hand curves over a flame. Vincent dropped under the window line. He drew the cig. He looked at Marcus. Marcus had his own pistol out, a Glock 19, and Marcus had moved to the side of the room where the angle of the window did not reach him. Marcus's face was the face of a man who had been waiting his whole life to be exactly this useful. One shooter. How far? 800 yards, maybe 700. He is on one knee at the tree line. He is wearing snow whites. He has a scoped bolt action. I cannot tell the caliber from here. He has not fired yet. He is ranging. He is ranging. He is alone. As far as I can see, he is not federal. No, federal teams did not put one man in snow whites at a tree line with a bolt rifle on a Christmas afternoon. Federal teams came with helicopters and warrants and bullhorns. This was something else. This was somebody who had wanted to send one man, alone, in the cold, with a long gun, and who had wanted that man to put one round through a window in a house at the end of a road and disappear back into the trees before anyone could find a footprint. This was the Sokolovs. This was real. Vincent crawled, on his elbows, across the floor of his father's house. He reached the back wall. He reached the bag. He pulled it to him. He opened it. He took out the second pistol, the backup, a Glock 17 with a threaded barrel, and he took out the small canvas roll that held the suppressor, and he screwed the suppressor on with 2 practiced turns of his wrist while his eyes stayed on the window. He did not have a long gun in the bag. He had not packed a long gun in the bag. The bag had been packed for running, not for fighting, and Vincent Calloway, who had been very good at one thing for 20 years, was about to find out how good he was at the other thing. Marcus, boss, out the back, through the den, around the woodpile. Keep the house between you and him. Go wide. Come up the slope on his right side. I will go out the side door under the eave, and I will work along the lake shore to his left. We catch him in a crossfire from his blind spots. We do not give him a second shot. Understood. If he fires before we are in position, if he fires once. The round comes through the window. You do not stop. You do not look at this house. You go straight to him. The people in this house will already be dead, or they will not be. There's nothing you can do for them by stopping. Do you understand me? A pause. Understood. Marcus? Yeah. You have been a good man. Marcus did not answer. Marcus went out the back door of the den without making a sound. Vincent looked over at the stove. He could see around the edge of it one small section of Eleanor's face, her hair, one eye. The eye was open. The eye was on him. "Stay there," he mouthed. She nodded. He went out the side door. The cold hit him like a slap. He had not put on a coat. There had not been time. He had a black sweater and dress slacks and the boots he had worn into the diner the night before, and the snow at the edge of the eaves was knee-deep where it had drifted, and the air smelled of pine and frozen water and the metal taste of cold so deep it went through cloth. He went low along the side of the house. He went past the woodpile. He went down the slope toward the lake. The tree line where the shooter was crouched was 800 yards across an open white field that ran from the side of the house down to the shore. Vincent could not cross that field. Vincent had to go the long way. Vincent went down to the lake shore itself, where the bank was high enough to hide him, and he moved north along the frozen edge with his back pressed against the snowbank and the Glock in his right hand, and his heart doing the slow, heavy thing that hearts did when they had been awake for 36 hours and were finally being asked to perform. He could not see the shooter from here. The slope of the bank was in the way, which meant the shooter could not see him. He moved. His breath fogged the air in front of him. He tried to keep it shallow. He did not entirely succeed. The cold was in his lungs now, and the cold was in the joints of his fingers, and the cold was making his eyes water, and the tears were freezing on his lashes by the time he had gone 200 yards. He kept moving. He thought about Marcus on the other side of the house. Marcus would be in the woods now, working east, behind the cover of the birch stand, coming up on the shooter's right side. Marcus had done this in places Vincent had only seen on television. Marcus would not miss. If Marcus got there first. 400 yards. He stopped. He listened. Nothing. No shot. No movement. The shooter was still ranging. The shooter was patient. The shooter had been told to take one shot and to take it well, and the shooter was waiting for the right angle, the right wind, the right second when a figure would pass through the front window of the house long enough to give him a clean line. Vincent thanked the cold for that. He kept moving. 500 yards. 600. He came up the slope of the bank, slow, on his belly. He came through a stand of cattails frozen stiff as wire. He came up behind a fallen log that had been a tree maybe 20 years ago and was now a long black shape under a hood of snow. He used the log as a rest. He raised his head. He saw the shooter. 80 yards. White suit, white hood. Bolt-action rifle braced against the trunk of a birch. Scope to the eye. Patient, patient, patient. Vincent did the math. 80 yards with a Glock 17 was a long shot for a pistol. It was not impossible. Vincent had practiced it. Vincent had practiced it in a basement range in River North until he could put 3 rounds out of 5 into a man-sized target at that distance. But 3 out of 5 was not the number he needed today. Today he needed 5 out of 5, and he needed the first one to count. He could not wait for Marcus, because as he watched, the shooter's body changed. The way a hunter's body changes when a hunter sees what he has been waiting for. Vincent looked over his shoulder, across the field, through the front window of the house. He could see very faintly a movement. It was Eleanor. She had stood up. She had stood up behind the stove, and she was looking, for 1 second, around the edge of it, because Oliver had made a sound, or because she had heard something, or because 36 hours had finally broken her composure and she could not stand to crouch on a hardwood floor for 1 more second without seeing whether the world was still out there. Her face was framed in the window for 1 second. The shooter saw her. Vincent saw the shooter see her. The shooter's finger moved to the trigger. Vincent did not breathe. He did not breathe. He brought the Glock up over the log. He set the front sight on the white shape at the base of the birch. He let the world go quiet, the way it had gone quiet 1,000 times before. He counted nothing. He thought nothing. He saw only the front sight, and the white shape, and the place on the white shape where the white shape ended and the dark trunk of the tree began, and he pressed. The Glock barked. The suppressor turned the bark into a cough. The round went out. He did not see it hit. He saw the shooter flinch. He saw the rifle move. He saw the shooter's head turn, very slightly, toward the lake, toward him, because 80 yards was close enough that the suppressed cough had reached the shooter's ear before the round had reached the shooter's body, and the shooter had a half-second to understand what was happening before whatever was going to happen happened. The shooter understood. The shooter swung the rifle off the house and toward Vincent. Vincent fired again, 4 rounds, 5. He emptied half the magazine at the white shape against the birch trunk. And somewhere in the middle of those rounds, one of them found something, and the shooter's body jerked, and the rifle barrel went up, and a single rifle round went off harmlessly into the gray sky above the trees, and the shooter went sideways into the snow at the base of the birch, and did not move again. And then, from the right side of the tree, Marcus came out of the woods at a dead run with his Glock up, and he closed the distance to the body in 11 strides, and he stood over it, and he put 1 more round through the back of the white hood from 3 feet away, the way you always did, because Marcus did not believe in finishing things halfway. Vincent let his head fall against the snow. He let the breath out. He had been holding it longer than he had realized. He stood up. He came around the log. He walked across the snow toward the body and toward Marcus. His legs were not entirely his own. The cold had taken them somewhere far away. Marcus was kneeling beside the dead man. Marcus had pulled the hood back. Marcus had patted the body down. Marcus looked up as Vincent approached. "He is alone, boss. No radio, no backup, no phone. He came in light." "Who is he?" "Russian. Tattoos on the neck under the suit. Bratva, but not Sokolov. This one is Solntsevskaya. This is a freelance contractor the Russians hire when they want it to look like one thing and be another. He was paid for this. Probably good money. Probably on his way to a flight out of Detroit tomorrow with a bag full of cash." "How did he find us?" Marcus did not answer at first. Marcus reached into the dead man's chest pocket. He pulled out a small folded paper. He opened it. It was a hand-drawn map. The road in, the gate, the house, the dock, the slope of the lake. All of it sketched in black pen by someone who had been to this house before. Marcus showed it to Vincent without saying anything. Vincent looked at it. It was Sal's handwriting. Vincent had known Sal's handwriting since 1986. It was the handwriting Sal had used to fill out a school permission slip for him when he was 12, and his father had been too drunk and his mother had been too tired. It was the handwriting Sal had used to write his wife birthday cards. It was the handwriting on the inside cover of the Bible Sal had bought Vincent for his confirmation, and Vincent did not think about Bibles, but he remembered the handwriting. Sal had given them this map, not because Sal had been turned by the Federals, not in the way Vincent had thought. Sal had been turned by the Russians a long time ago, and the Federals had picked him up tonight not because they had broken him, but because he had been a Federal informant for a year. And the Russians had been paying him on one side, and the Federals had been pressuring him on the other. And Sal had been a 63-year-old man with a wife and a daughter and a debt and a problem he could not solve. And Sal had finally chosen the side that paid him most. And the side that paid him most was Russian. Sal had drawn the map weeks ago, maybe months ago. He had given it to someone who had given it to someone who had given it to the man at the foot of the birch. The Federals had taken Sal off the board tonight because the Federals had finally figured it out. Sal had been a double agent. The Federals had used him as long as he had been useful, and then they had grabbed him when they realized he was running their case to Moscow. The Federal team in Vincent's lobby had not been the only reason tonight had happened. The Russians had been planning to kill Vincent at the diner. The Federals had been planning to arrest him by sunrise. 2 different operations had run on the same night because both sides had known, through Sal, that the Albanian deal was happening, and neither side had wanted that deal to close. Vincent had thought he was running from one enemy. He had been running from 2. And now one of them was dead at the foot of a birch tree, and the other one was in a Federal building in the South Loop, telling everything he knew, which was a great deal. And Vincent stood in the snow with a dead man at his feet, and finally, completely, understood the shape of the thing he had spent his life inside of. He stood there for a long time. Marcus did not interrupt. "Boss?" "Yeah, we need to move him. We need to move him before the body cools, because once the body cools, it is going to be hard to move, and we are going to have a body in the snow for the next 4 months." "Yeah." "There is a hole. Off the dock. The ice is thin enough at the channel that we can put him in, and the channel will take him under the cap and down the bay to deep water. He will not come up before the thaw, and when he comes up, he will not look like anyone." "Yeah." "Boss, you need to sit down." "I am fine." "You are not fine. Sit down." Vincent sat down, on a log, in the snow. He sat for 30 seconds. He put his head between his knees. He put his hands flat on top of his head. He stood up. "Let us move him." They moved him. The work was quiet, and the work was ugly, and the work took an hour. And when they were done, the lake had taken what Vincent's life had given it, and the snow around the birch was scuffed but not bloody, because the cold had stopped the bleeding, and the man's white suit had absorbed most of what there was. Marcus kicked fresh snow over the scuffed places. The wind, which had been picking up, did the rest. They walked back to the house together. Neither of them spoke. Eleanor was at the front door when they came up the steps. She had Oliver on her hip. She had not put him down since the moment she had pulled him off the couch. Her face was a pale mask. Her eyes went to Vincent's hands and then to his face, and then past him to Marcus. And she did not ask. She had stopped asking some hours ago, and Vincent was grateful in a way he did not know how to express. He came up onto the porch. She stepped aside to let him in. He stopped in the doorway, half in and half out. "Eleanor?" "Yeah." "It is done." She nodded. He did not know how much she had seen from the window. He did not know whether she had watched the dead man fall in the snow. He did not ask. She did not say. That was what they were going to do, he understood. From here on out. They were not going to ask. They were not going to tell. They were going to be two people in a small house at the end of a road, and the things they had each seen and done were going to belong to each of them privately, and they were going to share a life shaped around the silences, and one day maybe, if the silences became comfortable enough, one of them would say something true, and the other one would listen. He went inside. The fire in the stove was still going. The room was warm. Oliver squirmed in his aunt's arms, and she set him down on the rug in front of the stove, and the kid sat down with his stuffed rabbit in his lap and looked at the fire and said nothing. Vincent went to the bag. He took out the burner Marcus had given him. He turned it on. There were 43 missed messages. He read none of them. He typed one message, to Manny. 3 words. "We are safe." He turned the burner off. He took the battery out. He took the SIM out. He went to the kitchen and he put the SIM in a glass of water and he put the battery in the sink and he ran the water over both. And then he took the dripping pieces and the dead body of the phone outside and he put them in the bottom of the woodpile in the gap behind the 3rd row. And he came back inside and he washed his hands at the sink with the well water that came up cold and metallic and clean. He turned around. Eleanor was looking at him. She was sitting on the floor next to Oliver. She had her hand on the kid's back. She was looking at Vincent the way you look at a man you have decided, finally, to know. "You are going to tell me everything," she said. "Not tonight, not tomorrow, but you are going to tell me, eventually, everything." "Yes." "Because I cannot live in a house with a man I do not know." "Yes." "And you're going to listen when I tell you about my sister and my mother and the things I have not told anyone." "Yes." "Because if we are going to be people who live in this house together, we are going to be those people honestly, or we are going to be nothing." "Yes." She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she looked back at the fire. "Okay," she said. That was all. The first night, Oliver slept between them in the big bed in the back bedroom, because there was no other arrangement that any of them could imagine. The kid had not said more than 10 words since the diner. He had eaten 3 crackers and half a cup of warm milk, and he had fallen asleep with the rabbit jammed under his chin, and Vincent had lain awake until almost 3 in the morning on the far side of the bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the breathing of 2 people he did not know how to think of yet. In the morning, he made coffee. Eleanor took it without speaking. He gave the kid a piece of toast with butter, and the kid ate it sitting cross-legged on the rug in front of the stove, and the kid looked up at him with those big dark eyes once during the meal, and Vincent felt something move in his chest that he did not have a word for. Marcus left on the 3rd day. He took the Subaru. He drove south. He had a sister in Indianapolis he had not seen in 4 years, and he had decided, between the foot of a birch tree and the 3rd morning of coffee in a strange kitchen, that he was going to see her. Vincent gave him the address of a numbered account in the Caymans. Marcus took it. Marcus shook Vincent's hand at the front door the first time he had ever done it, and Marcus walked out into the snow toward the car. And Marcus did not look back because Marcus had learned not to look back a long time ago. Vincent watched the Subaru go down the road and disappear around the bend. He stood on the porch in the cold until he could not feel his ears. Then he went back inside. The first week was the hardest week. There were sounds in the night that were not anything. There were sounds in the day that were not anything. Oliver woke up twice screaming, and Eleanor was there before Vincent could move, and Vincent lay in the dark on his side of the bed and listened to her hum a song to the kid that he did not recognize because it was a song from her childhood and not from his. And he understood that there were going to be 1,000 things like that, the small, uncatalogued differences between her life and his that they would learn slowly and over time. The second week was easier. The 3rd week, Oliver said Vincent's name for the first time without prompting. The kid was on the rug. The kid was drawing on a piece of butcher paper Vincent had bought in town when he had gone for groceries, which he had begun to do every Thursday with a baseball cap and a beard he had not shaved in 14 days. The kid held up the paper. "Vincent, look." Vincent looked. The kid had drawn a house, a square with a triangle on top of it, 2 windows, a door, and in front of the door, 3 stick figures. A tall one, a medium one, a small one. Above the house, in shaky kindergarten letters, the kid had written one word, Home. The same drawing, the same word. The placemat had been left behind in a diner in Cicero and was probably in a federal evidence locker now, and had probably been photographed and labeled and entered into a chain of custody Vincent would never see. But here in a house in northern Michigan, a 5-year-old had drawn the same thing again from memory without being asked. Vincent took the drawing. He looked at it for a long time. He looked at the kid. "Can I keep this?" "It is for you." Vincent nodded. He carried it to the kitchen. He pinned it to the front of the refrigerator with the magnet that had been holding up a faded grocery list his father had written in 1989. He stood there for a long time looking at it. Eleanor came up behind him. She did not say anything. She put one hand on his back, very lightly, just between his shoulder blades, and she stood there with him. That was the first time she had touched him. She left her hand there for maybe 4 seconds. Then she walked away to the bedroom. She did not look at him. He did not turn around. Spring came late that year. It always did that far north. The snow was still on the ground in mid-April. The lake stayed frozen until the last week of the month. But in the first week of May, Vincent woke up to the sound of birds. Real birds. Not winter birds. Songbirds. And when he went out onto the porch with his coffee, the trees had a faint green dust on them that was the first sign of leaves. And the wind off the water smelled different. And somewhere across the lake a loon was calling. He stood there for a long time. Eleanor came out behind him. She had the kid by the hand. The kid was wearing rubber boots and a coat that was already a little too small for him because kids grew, even kids who had been through what Oliver had been through. She stood next to Vincent on the porch. She drank her coffee. "It is over," she said. He looked at her. "What is?" "The thing. Whatever it was. The thing you have been waiting for. The thing you check the road for every morning. It is over. It is not coming." "Eleanor, I know it is over. I do not know how I know. I just know." He looked back out at the lake. He thought about it. He thought about Manny, who had pled out in March to a single RICO count and was going to serve 6 years in a medium security facility outside Milan, Michigan, and who had not given anyone Vincent's name because Manny had been a man of his word for 40 years and was not going to stop now. He thought about Frankie, who had died in February of a heart attack in a federal holding cell at the age of 67, before he had ever made it to a courtroom, and who had been quietly buried by his sister in a cemetery on the south side of Chicago that Vincent had visited once, alone, in March. After driving down at 3 a.m. in a truck he had bought for cash from a man in Marquette. He thought about Sal, who had taken a deal in January and was somewhere in a federal witness program now, in a small town somewhere with a new name and a wife who had divorced him, and a daughter who had not spoken to him in 6 months. He thought about the Sokolov leadership, 3 of whom had been arrested in a federal raid in February on the basis of evidence that had originated somehow in a phone in Vincent Calloway's coat pocket, and who were now also going to be in courtrooms for the rest of their natural lives, because the irony of the listening had been that the Federals had also been listening to the Russians, and the Russians had said things on intercepted lines that had hanged them. He thought about the Calloway operation, which had been dismantled in 3 months and was now, in any meaningful sense, gone. He thought about himself. A dead man. Officially dead. There was a death certificate. There was an obituary in a Chicago paper. There was a grave in a cemetery in Bridgeport with his name on it, and the grave had a body in it because Manny had paid an undertaker $80,000 to procure a John Doe of the right height and weight, and to file the paperwork so that the Federals, after a half-hearted 3-month search, had marked the case closed and gone home. Vincent Calloway was a dead man. The man on the porch in northern Michigan with a coffee mug in his hand was somebody else. He had not chosen the name yet. He had been thinking about it. He had been thinking about it for 4 months. It was going to come to him in time. "You are right," he said. "I know I am right." "It is over." "Yes." Oliver tugged on her hand. "Frogs," the kid said. "What?" "Frogs, in the puddle, by the dock. Yesterday I saw 3. "You did not." "I did." "Show me." The kid let go of her hand and went down the steps of the porch and across the wet grass toward the dock. his rubber boots making small sucking sounds in the soft ground. Eleanor watched him go. She did not move. After a moment, she said without looking at Vincent, "He calls you Dad sometimes." "I know." "He has not called anyone that, ever." "I know. I do not know what to do with it." "Neither do I." "I'm not asking you to be his father." "I know. But if he calls you that, and you respond, then you are, whether either of us was asking for it or not. You understand?" "I understand." She nodded. She drank her coffee. She looked out at the lake. "I am not in love with you," she said. "I know. I do not know if I am ever going to be. There's too much. There's the diner. There's the truck. There's the man at the tree. There's everything you have not told me and everything I do not want to know. I do not know what I feel about you, Vincent. I've been trying to figure it out for 4 months and I have not yet." "I know. But I'm here." "Yes. And I'm going to stay here." "Yes. And in time, maybe I will figure out what to call what this is. And so will you. And we will both call it the same thing, or we will not. And if we do not, that will be all right too. Because the only thing I am sure of right now is that he is happy. He is happy here. He sleeps through the night. He laughs. He drew you a picture of a house and put you in it. I have not seen him do anything like that in 3 years. So whatever we are, you and me, we are going to keep being it. For him. For now. And we will see." Vincent looked at her. In the soft May light, she looked like a different woman than the one who had walked into a diner 6 months ago in a taped-up coat. She had put on weight. She had slept. There was a small line at the corner of her mouth that he was pretty sure was the beginning of a laugh line, although he had not yet seen her laugh enough to be sure. "For him," he said. "For him. For now. For now." She turned her face up to him then, just a little, just enough. He bent down. Slowly enough that she could have moved away. She did not move away. He put his mouth very lightly against the place on her temple where her hair met her cheekbone, and he held it there for 1 second, and he stood up. She closed her eyes. She opened them. She did not say anything. She walked down the steps of the porch and out into the wet grass toward the dock, where Oliver was crouched at the edge of a puddle, pointing at something in the water with the absolute concentration of a 5-year-old who had found something that mattered more than anything else in the world. Vincent stood on the porch with his coffee and watched them. The lake was opening up. The first patches of blue water were showing through the rotting ice near the shore. A loon called again, somewhere far out. The sun was coming over the trees. He thought about the man he had been at the back booth of a diner in Cicero on Christmas Eve. The man who had been about to fake a love story for the Albanians. The man who had cried at a carol his mother used to play. The man who had killed 2 men in front of a child and then driven 600 miles north with a stranger in his passenger seat because he had not known what else to do. That man was dead. The man on the porch was something else. He did not yet know what. He had time to find out. Inside the house, on the front of the refrigerator, held up by an old magnet, was a drawing on butcher paper. A square house, a triangle roof, 2 windows, a door. 3 stick figures in front of it, and above it all, in shaky kindergarten letters, 1 word. The word that somewhere along the way had become true. Down at the dock, Oliver shrieked with delight, because a frog had jumped, and Eleanor laughed, and the laugh carried up across the wet grass and the cold morning air to the porch. And Vincent Calloway, the man who had been Vincent Calloway, the man who would be somebody else by summer, the man who was, on this morning in May, simply a man on a porch with a cup of coffee, heard the laugh and felt something move in his chest that he finally had a word for. He smiled. It was a small smile. It was a careful smile. It was the smile of a man who was out of practice and who knew it. But it was a smile. He went down the steps. He walked across the wet grass. He went to find his family.